The story opens with the image of a peaceful town. There, after gaining consciousness, Derek followed an old beggar to learn the trade. Though he was only a pathetic one-star mage, the old man's boastfulness was so extreme that he called himself a grand mage wherever he went. But needing knowledge to survive, Derek accepted becoming his servant, regardless of the old man's unpleasant temperament. The old man nearby was somewhat shocked to see this scene. Suddenly, Derek's eyes snapped open, his pupils contracting slightly. He clenched his teeth and focused all his mana into his hand. That power shot out and formed an arrow that flew straight forward. The arrow plunged into a tree, carving a transverse cut across its trunk. The two of them, master and apprentice, silently watched the arrow remain lodged in the tree before them. Seeing that, the old man was so terrified he broke out in a cold sweat. So I tended to the old man in every way. Derek, though covered in sweat and grime, shone with bright eyes and became a one-star mage within a year. A small fire flickered beside a humble hut under the silent night sky. The old man was now utterly drunk, holding a bottle of wine. His face tilted upward as he said, "Those noble scions beyond the northern Ebelstein wall, some reached 3 stars before their coming-of-age ceremony." Derek sat beside him, nibbling bread while listening. "That's a realm someone of your low-blind bloodline might not reach even in a lifetime. So don't be arrogant. Your petty talent will collapse against the 2-star wall." He always ranted about bloodlines. Derek silently stared at the bread in his hand as the old man's shrill voice continued. "Magic is the privilege of bloodlines. No matter how you struggle, it's useless." He kept nagging me about the insurmountable wall between nobles and commoners. He hung his head, lost in thought, while the old man beside him slept soundly. Was it longing for things the old man himself never achieved? Derek quietly turned his head and glanced at the old man's back. That night was long and endless, and the sky suddenly unleashed a heavy downpour. The next day, returning home, Derek stood silently looking at the old man's corpse lying on the ground. I saw he was dead. His face remained calm as if nothing had happened, showing no trace of grief. His body was bruised all over, as if he'd been beaten. I thought perhaps the old man had started trouble and been beaten up. Derek toiled through the rainy night, digging with each shovel of earth. Only later did I learn he had done his utmost to drag the old man's body away. He had been beaten to death by the guards. Derek stood in the rain before the old man's simple grave, his expression somewhat sullen. They said the old man was caught trying to steal a 2-star magic book from the storehouse. Derek suddenly squeezed his eyes shut. No one understood why an old man with no ambition would do that. No one knew the reason. A system notification suddenly appeared before Derek's eyes. That boastful old man always prized bloodline. A system notification suddenly appeared before Derek's eyes. That boastful old man always prized bloodline. The notification read, "Basic magic learned. Choose a primary magic system. This choice is irreversible." After all, I wasn't originally from this world. Thus 4 years passed, and the village retained the same ancient, solemn appearance as 4 years before. A woman appeared, her posture and expression full of confidence. Katia Flameheart. A red flag fluttered in the wind. The former lady of the Flameheart Viscount family had fallen on hard times. Born noble, she was a 3-star mage, and many mercenary companies wanted to recruit Katia. Derek recalled the scene when he first met her. She stayed in Ebelstein, took commissions from the Beldern mercenaries, and taught me, who had joined the mercenaries as a child and only knew 1-star magic. She taught him many things. I learned a great deal from a 3-star mage like Katia. Scene shift to a tavern. The Tears of Beldern Inn. Katia sat opposite Derek, instructing him. As a mage, it's natural to desire advancement. Besides, Derek, as you know, you have the talent for it. She spoke seriously to him, warning that excessive ambition would only slow his progress. Derek calmly nodded and replied, "Yes, I will remember that." Katia folded her arms, looked him straight in the eye, and ordered, "Now close your eyes and feel your mana." While Derek concentrated on sensing his mana, Katia kept guiding him from the side. Calmly feel where the mana originates, how it flows, and imagine you're using that mana to materialize the image in your mind. She watched Derek opposite her, fully focused on feeling his mana. Though she showed no outward expression, she was somewhat surprised inwardly. Indeed, the boy's innate mana was substantial, Perhaps thanks to extensive combat experience, his control was quite steady. As Derek concentrated on sensing his mana, he suddenly opened his eyes wide. Kadia's face betrayed panic in her eyes. A loud bang erupted in the tavern. The patrons, startled by the noise, snapped angrily. What was that? What's going on? Is something wrong? An attack? Go out and see. Go on. Derek panted, staring at his palms, ignoring the commotion outside. A hand suddenly grabbed his and pulled him away. Master Kadia hurried ahead of Derek without looking back and said, Derek, say nothing. Follow me. Everyone rose, weapons in hand, on alert, but paid no heed to the two of them. What is it? There was clearly an explosion. Search thoroughly. It's definitely an explosion. Kadia led Derek into a small hidden corner. Seeing her tall back ahead, he timidly called, Master. Kadia glanced back at him slightly, then seriously instructed, Derek, listen carefully to what I say. Hearing that, Derek felt some worry. Yes. Kadia leaned in toward Derek and said seriously, as you know, nobles are very sensitive about their privileges, and magic is the greatest of those privileges. Her gaze fixed on him. Innate power is regarded as a gift, but it's limited to the nobility. Occasionally, a commoner reaches 3 stars. Looking directly at the young man, Kadia said solemnly, but most of them spend their lives researching magic. What you just used, and she said something that stunned Derek, is a 3-star chaotic magic called Illusion City. Thus, I became a 2-star mage at 14. The system notice appeared again. 2-star magic available. 2-star Illusion City magic learned. Derek and Kadia sat in silence, facing each other on the wagon. After that, Kadia continued to guide me, teaching various magics, and sometimes telling me about the high society she once belonged to. Kadia now wore a fine outfit as she stood before Derek. A year passed, and Kadia departed. 2 mysterious figures appeared. It was said the Elvester Viscount family had invited her to be a private tutor. The Elvester Viscount family is where the border Viscount Elvester holds dominion, a power so great that even the Grand Duke in the capital dares not meddle lightly. He silently looked at her, bowed his head, and sat in the carriage with Kadia as she announced an offer that couldn't be refused. Through the carriage glass, Kadia gave a sad smile and waved goodbye to Derek. Becoming the magic instructor for a noble family of that stature is a great blessing for anyone. Before leaving, Kadia gifted me a 2-star magic book. The system notification appeared again. Learn magic list. 1-star mana arrow, 1-star discharge, 2-star fireball, transmutation magic, 1-star light creation, chaotic magic, 1-star soundproofing, 2-star illusion city. Summoning magic, 1-star summon guiding spirit. Recon magic, 1-star direction sensing, 2-star clairvoyance. Derek sat alone in his room and slammed the book shut. Another year passed. He left the book abandoned on the bed and turned coolly to leave the room. I had taught myself 2 more 2-star magics. Derek's face was expressionless, his gaze sharp as a blade. Only 16, and I don't intend to stop here. At the Tears of Beldurn Tavern, a voice called from inside. Well, Derek? It's been a while since there's been a commission worth mentioning. Derek sat alone at the bar opposite Jaden and asked, What commission is it? Jaden cheerfully waved his hand and replied, It's a commission from Grand Duke Duplain. Do you understand what that means? That same cold face as always. Derek glanced at him without emotion. Duplain? The Duplain family? Why would a place like that come to us? At this, Jaden suddenly grew excited, his eyes lighting up at the thought of money. Kid, does that matter now? It's Duplain. Duplain, the place that spins gold like water. He grabbed the collar of Derek and pulled him closer in excitement. Besides, kid, if we could secure a line with Duplain from this, you'll have endless business opportunities later. He brushed off the spot where his shirt had been grabbed and asked, So what do they want us to do? Jaden produced 2 gold coins and said cheerfully, It's nothing big. They want us to clear out some magical beasts on the outskirts of the Grand Duke's domain. Derek looked skeptical. That's all. Jaden quickly answered, Exactly. Nobles never haggle. Hearing that, he rubbed his chin in thought. Smells fishy. Why would a family of that scale hire mercenaries to exterminate magical beasts? With that in mind, Derek turned and walked away. I won't do it. Send someone else. Jaden was in a panic as he watched him leave. Hey, wait a moment. Derek turned back and coldly left him with one line. Go call someone else. You know I don't take shady jobs. Jaden, annoyed, said, Kid, fine, I'll do it. But they need a mage. They need a mage. Do you know how rare mages are in the company these days? He put a hand on his hip and loudly said, "Without you, nobody could do it. That's why I called." Derek, unimpressed, continued walking off. I mean, really, you need a mage to kill a few magical beasts? Anyway, no, don't want to get involved in trouble. Suddenly, he spun around and caught something midair that Jaden had thrown. Jaden leaned on the bar and laughed. 1 gold coin up front. This is the deposit, not the full payment. Derek opened his palm and stared at the gold coin in his hand. The faces of Delon, Katerina, and Eislein suddenly flashed into view. Jaden, flustered, hurriedly waved his hands to explain, No, honored agent, this kid is the real deal. He's the best mage I know." Delon ignored Jaden's words and immediately turned to order, "Let's go. This isn't a task you can hand to children." Katerina suddenly leaned in and whispered something to him. Both of them turned their eyes toward the mysterious young woman accompanying them. Derek's face showed no emotion when someone spoke to him. "Your name is Derek, right? Talk to me a bit." In a majestic stretch of wilderness within Grand Duke Duplain's domain, a monster was felled by a magic arrow. Derek's gaze was like that of a cold, brutal predator. He decisively severed another monster's head with a single sword stroke. Another monster behind raised its forelimb to ambush Derek. He nimbly dodged, causing the creature's strike to miss. Derek coldly grabbed the creature by the throat. He summoned a massive surge of magic to electrocute the beast to death. He tossed the last corpse, blackened and charred, onto the ground. Derek turned back and reported coolly, "All done, agent." The three stood stunned. Delon folded his arms and praised, "Not bad." The mysterious girl gave a faint smile as Delon added, "Handled quickly for so many." Night had fallen, and the warm glow of the tavern lights stood out vividly. The tears of Beldurn Tavern angrily demanded, "Are you planning to be the noble's hunting dog?" Jaden, about to leap across the table in anger, hurriedly cautioned, "Calm down, there's a guest here." Beldurn still yelled at Derek in fury, "Even if we're lowly commoners, don't go be the noble's lack." Jaden looked at his flushed, angry face and said calmly, "Hasn't Derek told you how much this pays?" Beldurn ground his teeth. How much? How much to throw away your pride and crawl through the noble's legs?" Jaden showed no change in expression. "It's not literally crawling through legs." Then he made a hand signal. P-Line grew even more upset. "What? 1 silver coin?" Jaden simply shook his head calmly. Beldurn's eyes glittered greedily when he learned the true value was 1 gold coin. He bowed deeply to Jaden and shouted, "Please, let me crawl through legs." Jaden flustered. "Will you shut up? I said not literally crawl through legs." Outside, the sky was now completely dark. Beldurn had dozed off at the table, drooling all over it. A voice suddenly rang out. "So how's the commission?" Derek calmly held his cup and answered, "Nothing special. Just kill a few goblins." Jaden added, "First impressions were poor, but they seem wealthy, don't they?" Derek lowered his eyes and said thoughtfully, "That's true, but all 3 of them lie." Jaden turned, searching for something as he asked, "Really?" Derek looked down and replied, "The agent of the family. Nobles usually combine 3 traits: youth, strength, diplomacy. He had none of them. The woman claiming to be a dishwasher. I remembered how she handed me a towel. Her hands were too clean for someone who does heavy labor." A call interrupted him. "Derek." Derek looked up at the voice. Jaden regarded him seriously. "We're mercenaries. We don't need to probe too deeply into those who commission us. Just do the job and take the pay." Derek coldly replied, "Yes." Jaden softened his gaze at the 2 youngsters. What Jaden said was right. This is wilderness, and in the wild food and clothing matter most. Everything else can wait. The next day, a vast domain came into view, the Duplain Grand Ducal Domain. Derek sheathed his sword, turned, and calmly told everyone, "It's all cleared." With a situation like this, Lynn won't dare come near for a while. Delon praised. "Well done, you've worked hard." Jaden cheerfully said, "All right then, how will the rest of the payment be settled?" 2 gleaming gold coins were held up high. Jaden grabbed the 2 coins and merrily tossed them at Derek's head to his displeasure. "Look, Derek, 2 whole gold coins." Derek was momentarily speechless. "Put them down and speak properly." Old Delon suddenly cleared his throat to draw attention, then frowned, his expression somewhat stern, but he said, "Derek, I hold your skills in high regard and want to assign another commission. What do you think?" Both men looked up at him in surprise. Delon continued, "The Grand Duke's residence will pay 15 black minted gold for this commission. Jaden was shocked. 15. Delon looked straight at Derek and asked, "Will you take it?" Derek answered seriously, "Yes." The carriage carrying them slowly drove off. At last the carriage reached its destination. A magnificent palace appeared. The Duplain Grand Ducal Domain, the Duplain residence. Jaden got down and looked up in awe. "Is this the Duplain Grand Ducal family?" "It's impressive," Delon said to the two of them. "Before we enter, allow me to reintroduce myself." Jaden cheerfully replied, "Yes." "Oh my, we've been meeting all day. Please go ahead." Delon looked at them solemnly and introduced himself. "I am Delon, steward of the Duplain Grand Ducal residence. Apologies, due to my duties, I had to conceal my identity." Jaden, a bit displeased, said, "Yes." "Oh my, well then." The woman politely spoke up. "I am Katerina, head lady-in-waiting of the Grand Ducal residence." Jaden flustered and bowed before them. "Oh my, how rude of me towards such high-ranking figures. I'm Jaden, captain of the Beldern Mercenary Company." Derek said nothing but thought coldly to himself. Not an agent but the steward, not a scullery maid but the head lady-in-waiting. I suspected they weren't ordinary, but this is on another level. A pair of feet stepped down from the carriage, and both turned to look. Jaden asked curiously, "So who is that?" The mysterious girl removed her hood, her long hair flowing in the breeze. Derek was a little stunned at the sight. The mysterious girl smiled brightly at everyone and introduced herself. "I am Aisline Eleanor Duplain. I would like to invite you, Derek, to be a magic instructor for my younger sister." Derek, the eldest daughter of the Duplain family. Aisline Eleanor Duplain. Derek glanced at her with some unease. A magic instructor for the young lady? A grand palace bustled with servants coming and going. The Duplain ducal residence. The chamber door suddenly swung open from outside. A broad-shouldered figure strode in, saying as he came, "Father, Brother Valerian, please look at this." Duplain, reviewing documents, looked up annoyed at his son. "Ray, what are you doing? Behave in accordance with your station." Ray stood beside a maid who was crying pitifully and shouted, "The one who needs to mind her status isn't me, but Daila. Time and again she lays hands on even my servants." The maid's face was wet with tears. Valerian turned to his younger brother irritably and softened his voice. "Father and your brother are talking." Ray, still angry, accused, "Over 10 servants quit last month. Every few days, she breaks things." He stepped up to Duplain and slammed his hand on the table in anger. "When will you punish that rebellious child properly?" Valerian, furious at his brother's attitude, sprang to his feet and shouted, "Ray!" He frowned, his tone carrying authority. "Enough. Stop and leave." Ray said nothing, only scowled as he turned to face his brother. The silhouettes of 2 girls suddenly appeared. "Father, even if Daila is willful, we still have Aisline, don't we?" Ray scowled and, frowning, offered his opinion. "I think we should let Daila go." Duplain removed his glasses and said calmly, "This is not your concern." Ray angrily replied, "I've had the steward inquire about several convents with good facilities frequented by nobles. Sending her to serve there is better than her being a thorn in people's sides, right? If this continues, she'll only bring trouble on us." Duplain's face darkened at this, and he grabbed his son's head, then forced his head down hard onto the table. Duplain's voice carried an indescribable anger, his gaze cold as a blade as he said, "I told you it's not your business." Pressed down, Ray gritted his teeth and refused to yield. It's time for father to be decisive. Duplain's look toward him held a few notes of displeasure. Aisline cheerfully led the way for Derek, then suddenly turned to ask him, "My younger sister, Daila, have you heard of her?" Derek racked his memory and answered, "Daila, I've seen her name in the Duplain genealogy." Hearing that, he bowed his head in sadness and helplessness and said, "Yes, that's right. Perhaps few people know her in the world." The door to the room opened once more. Aisline, seeing the 2 men before her, hurriedly spoke up. Valerian looked at her gently and said, "It's been a long time, hasn't it? Is Ebelstein treating you well?" She nodded lightly. "Yes, thanks to your care, I'm living comfortably." Valerian tried to push the still irritated Ray along while awkwardly smiling and waving to the 2. "Well, as you see, Ray is slightly injured. We'll talk later." Aisline simply replied softly, "Yes, brother." Derek's gaze was sharp and cold as he looked at the 2. Ray and Valerian strode away with composure, while his eyes flicked to another direction. There, a maid was covering her face and crying pitifully. Seeing that, Derek fell silent and said nothing. The two of them, and he sat seriously in the study. Duplian calmly said, "Good, as long as you live well in Ebelstein." Iselin turned to him with a bright smile. "Yes, thanks to Father's careful arrangements. This is the magic teacher from Ebelstein. He has agreed to teach Daila." Duplian, still fixed on his pile of documents, replied, "Very well." Iselin and Derek stood. She smiled at Duplian and said, "Then I will take my leave." As the two began to turn away, Duplian calmly ordered, "You stay." Derek, hearing this, simply turned to look at him calmly. Sunlight from outside slanted into the dim room through the door crack. The documents continued being written without stop. Duplian reviewed the papers and asked Derek, "You look too young. 16?" He looked at the Duke and replied politely, "Yes." The Duke asked further, "How far can you use magic?" Derek answered honestly, "I can use a bit of first-tier magic." Duplian reached up and pushed his glasses down. He looked directly at Derek and said seriously, "Don't be overly modest. Humility isn't always a virtue." He said nothing and simply stared at Duplian in silence. In Derek's eyes, the whole person of Duke Duplian now radiated a terrifying aura. The Duke's courtesy was useless before a fifth-tier mage. Derek bowed his head and said to him, "If I was rude, I apologize." Duplian replied, "It's all right. I understand why you had to hide your skill. Excessive talent sometimes erodes its own bearer." He pushed his glasses up as if judging age and attire, hardly resembling a magic tutor at all. Derek nodded seriously. "I am a mercenary." Duplian looked at him and said, "Iselin chose you, so I have no objection. I permit you access to Daila's annex." He stood and added, "A maid will show you the way." "I'm leaving now." Derek hurriedly spoke up. "May I ask something?" Duplian calmly agreed. "Speak." With the Duke's assent, Derek said, "Sir, I'm a mercenary. Once I accept a task, I finish it. Iselin hired me." He looked at the Duke and added, "Teach Daila magic and help her integrate into noble society." Duplian frowned displeased. "Why state the obvious?" Derek stared into his eyes. "That's why I'd like to ask your permission for something." Duplian regarded him with curiosity. A plate sliced through the air. It smashed into the wall and shattered, causing the maid beside it to cry out in fright. She hurriedly bowed deeply, stammering, I'm sorry, my lady." The woman opposite sneered. "Sorry? Do you think an apology from the likes of you holds any weight?" Then she suddenly ordered, making the maid blanch, "Get out of my sight. If you dare show your face again, I'll throw it straight at that pathetic face." There, a steaming cup of tea appeared. But why was it for Derek? Jaden, sitting opposite Iselin, asked puzzled. The Duplian household should have dozens of magic tutors, right? Besides, commoners teaching nobles magic isn't easy. She lowered her head and replied, "Almost every renowned mage on the continent was invited. Everyone gave up. I was so desperate I would take anyone who can use magic." Iselin then looked up at Jaden and said, "Derek was a mercenary, but understands noble culture." Jaden looked at her and answered, "Maybe his master was once a noble and taught him everything." Iselin seemed to awaken. "I see. Compared to ordinary mercenaries, he has presence. I think Derek can discipline Daila." Jaden suddenly said, "Miss Iselin, you need to learn to read people better." Iselin, surprised, asked, "What do you mean?" He looked at her seriously and said, "Derek is a street mage who has been a mercenary since childhood. Do you think such people survive on presence and kindness alone?" Iselin was somewhat surprised, but said nothing. Derek was led away by a maid. Alone, he stood before the wide door of the room. Derek's hand suddenly rose into the air. He raised his hand and lightly knocked on the door. Derek looked at the door before him and said nothing. He reached out and turned the doorknob. Opening the door, Derek calmly said, "Hello." Seeing the lone figure of the lady before him, he carefully said, "I'm Derek, with your permission." The young lady merely ordered softly, "Come here. Daila Katerine Duplian." A Duplian. Derek slowly moved closer to the young lady. The corner of her mouth suddenly curled up, and a cup of water was thrown squarely into his face. Derek's face was now soaked with tea. Daila stood arrogantly and taunted. "Oh my, what to do?" Thought a sewer rat crawled in. She stepped closer with relish, her tone full of mockery. "Isn't this the mercenary the steward mentioned? Or look closely, is it really a rat?" One hand she placed on the chair, and she set one foot on it as well. Daila grabbed a bucket of filthy water, stood on the chair, and poured it all over Derek's head. "Does the smell of sewer water make you homesick? That stench suits your outfit." Standing on the chair, she said with feigned regret, Out of water? What a pity. Derek said nothing. He only looked up and coldly glanced at her. Daila frowned in displeasure at that and angrily kicked him in the chest. How dare you look at me like that? Derek was kicked and fell into a seated position. Daila stood arrogantly with her hands on her hips, watching his struggle. She suddenly raised her hand as if to remove her shoe. Damn it. Daila held the shoe up to her nose in disgust. That filthy stench. Then she hurled the shoe forcefully at Derek. Daila sat down lightly in the nearby chair. She looked down at him arrogantly and said, You sewer rat, know your place. You dare teach me? Didn't the streets teach you basic manners? At a desk in the study, Duplian was quietly watching the scene outside the window, his expression clouded with thought. He recalled the earlier conversation when Derek said, My being here means Miss Daila's problem isn't easy to solve. So I want to ask you, who loves Daila wholeheartedly is? Derek coldly glanced at him. Do you permit me to use what measures to teach the young lady? Hearing that, he pondered and offered no answer. A sudden, strong slap landed on Daila's face, turning it red and leaving her stunned. Derek rolled his wrist while Daila remained dazed after the slap. She looked up in panic at the fierce figure before her and stood frozen, touching the slapped cheek without saying a word. Derek's gaze toward Daila was full of killing intent. Wake up. 3 years earlier, Derek and Katia sat leisurely in a carriage. Derek wiped his sword and said, Sir, if you had to teach an ungrateful, headstrong disciple, what would you do? Derek wiped his sword and said, Sir, if you had to teach an ungrateful, headstrong disciple, what would you do? He heard that and was slightly displeased. Isn't that too idealistic? What if even that won't work on that disciple? Katia replied in explanation. The essence of education is to guide a student toward a better path. Derek, if you can't communicate through understanding and tolerance, you must find a starting point. Hearing that, Derek asked, What starting point is that? Katia glared at him, etched fear into them. Daila, stunned by the slap, clutched her face. Derek crossed his arms and looked at her, then said, Treat others with care and respect. I won't say it twice. Wake up. Daila pushed herself up with her hands, and she slapped him hard across the face. Daila scowled at him. Something like you. How dare you? How dare you? Another harsh slap landed on her face. Derek's face darkened as he glanced at Daila. I won't say it twice. When dealing with others, you must show care and respect. Daila's expression gradually turned frantic. She sprang up and shouted at the top of her voice. Butler, what are you doing? This bastard just hit your Miss Daila. Hearing Daila's scream, Delon rushed in with the servants in a panic. Miss Daila, are you all right? He came up to Derek and reproachfully demanded. What are you doing? How dare you lay a hand on the young lady? If the Grand Duke finds out. He said nothing but pulled a rolled document from his coat, held the letter aloft, and Derek said coldly, Grand Duke Duplian has authorized me with full authority over Miss Daila's education. Whatever methods I use, remember this has his permission. Delon took the paper and took off his glasses to read it. Daila watched tensely as he read. Night completely covered the sky above the castle. Ray grabbed Valerian's hand and urgently said, Calm down, please. Valerian angrily thrust the door open and shouted, Are you the mercenary? Derek merely looked up coldly at it. Furious, Valerian grabbed his collar to strike Derek. You dare hit Daila? Ray quickly intervened. Put that down and then speak. Derek looked back coldly. This is something His Highness permitted. Ray hurriedly stepped between them. Listen, he's a guest Aislinn invited. If you act like this, you'll put Aislinn in an awkward position. Father already agreed. He spun away in anger and left. You coming? Ray, don't block my way. Mind your own business. Ray laughed conciliatorily and laid a hand on Derek's shoulder. I've heard. Daila needs a beating to wake up. Don't worry, he won't go too far. Derek turned his head to look at Ray, watching their retreating backs as he sighed. Why cling to that useless child? The door ajar illuminated part of the doll's face. Valerian opened the room and said to him, Go in. He explained as he walked. This was Daila's room when she lived in the main mansion. Now it's left and used like this. Derek's gaze fell on a painting in the room. Valerian's eyes softened as he looked at the painting. Daila loved to paint. Whenever she showed a picture, she blushed and looked so cute. Looking at the painting before him, he added, But she rarely finished a work. She usually painted only the part she liked and left the rest unfinished. Valerian suddenly spoke. Sorry, I was too emotional earlier. My apologies. Derek turned to him and replied, It's all right. Don't worry about it. Looking at a room full of paintings, he asked, "But why bring me to this room?" Valerian answered sadly, "I wanted you to see that Daila wasn't a child meant to be discarded or beaten, yet at some point she became overly obsessed with noble blood." Derek listened in silence as he spoke. In the end, she was expelled from the main manor and confined to the secondary residence. "I can't understand what turned her into this." He picked up a book from the shelf. "I must stop Daila from entering the convent at all costs. If she learns even a single first-tier spell, I can persuade my father." Valerian suddenly grabbed Derek's shoulders tightly. "So please, save Daila." He brusquely pushed Valerian's hands away. "Wait." Derek flipped through a few pages and realized she hadn't entirely given up magic. "Look at the dense notes in this book." He turned to Valerian and asked, "Those other volumes are mostly theory and etiquette, right?" Valerian replied, "Yes. Nobles usually study etiquette." Derek fell into contemplative thought. A beautifully framed landscape painting hung on the wall. Derek snapped the book shut. He handed the book to Valerian and said, "I'll give it a try." The beautiful night sky appeared through the window. Daila was sound asleep on the soft bed. Suddenly a bucket of water was poured straight down. Daila screamed in alarm as she was soaked. Derek looked at her coldly and said, "Are you sleepy now?" Daila grit her teeth and sat up. "Are you insane?" He didn't answer but grabbed her roughly. "Come with me. There's somewhere you need to go." Daila shouted in anger. "Hey, let go. How dare you touch me? Are you crazy?" Derek dragged her down the corridor despite her frantic screams. "It hurts. Let go. I'm not going. You'll do something else. Stop this bastard now." The clear moonlight shone down below. Derek said nothing as he hauled Daila out of the palace, then coldly flung her to the ground. Daila ground her teeth and cursed. "What will this change? Wake up, you low-born. How dare you try to teach me?" Derek suddenly spoke, startling Daila. "Won't listen? Then I'll tell you an interesting story." He wore a sinister smile and said, "The truth is I have no intention of teaching Daila any magic. I just enjoy beating arrogant nobles." Daila went pale and stammered. "What?" Derek shrugged as if it were obvious. "Doesn't it make sense? A lowly person like me has no reason to adore nobles. Teaching or morality is just a pretty excuse." Daila trembled. "What are you saying?" He faced her and grinned eerily. "I only need an excuse to punch the arrogant faces of nobles like you." Derek drew his sword and said, "Do you know how wonderful the screams of those aristocrats sound?" Daila trembled and threatened. "Do you think you'll be safe after doing this?" He raised the sword high with a wicked smile. "Of course, you're about to be locked in a convent anyway. Who would believe someone like you?" Daila's face grew paler and paler. "If something terrible happens, I'll just give my life as atonement. A low-born life is worth only that, right?" The sword in Derek's hand reflected Daila's terrified face clearly. If I run away, no one will remember me anyway. Consider it helping the Duplian family remove a thorn. If that man catches her, she'll surely die." He stood still, watching her figure fade into the distance. "If she runs across the meadow back to the manor, she'll be caught immediately." Her face was torn, but she didn't dare stop. She had to slip into the forest. "I know the paths there. If she can escape, she can reach the estate." Daila leapt over a root. "Then the one who's done for will be him, not me." Daila froze as she glanced back. A massive fireball appeared. Derek raised his hand, controlling the fireball. Daila turned back and bit her lip, thinking a fireball. Staring at the huge fireball in Derek's hand, she was stunned. "That's a second-tier spell. How can he use tier 2? Derek smirked slightly. Another fireball sliced through the air towards her. Daila was so frightened she could only stand frozen. She hurriedly bent down to dodge. Where the fireball landed, a massive explosion erupted. Daila was terrified, eyes wide, sweat pouring down her face. Derek curled his lips in a smile, voice full of regret. "Miss." The full moon cast a pale golden veil over the silent night. The woman's running tore through that quiet space. Daila fled in panic, as if something was chasing her. Paying so much attention behind her, she unfortunately tripped over a dry branch. Daila grabbed the cold ground. Fortunately, her face was still intact. She suppressed the pain and forced herself to stand. Suddenly, a volley of arrows shot toward her. At a glance, Daila saw those sharp arrows. She nimbly stepped back just as the arrows embedded in the ground. Luckily, none struck her. Daila hesitated and collapsed, watching everything unfold before her. Derek approached and praised. "You move quite well, surprisingly so. For someone who spends all day buried in the secondary residence, you have skill. She gritted her teeth, eyes full of fury as she looked up at him. Immediately, without waiting for his reaction, Daila bolted forward. Derek pressed his lips together at her cold demeanor. She wasn't doing much better. Her strength was beginning to wane, but she reminded herself, how long must I keep running? Can I escape? If this continues, I'll surely be caught. Not far into her run, Daila was again drawn to what was behind her, him bending to cast magic, and a deep pool of water had appeared on the ground. Derek looked up, and everything returned to its original state. He felt a surge inside. Right, this is the forest from the painting. It must be where she used to play as a child. Derek recalled this scene he'd seen in a painting and guessed. Cradled by vast nature, she had unconsciously sensed the flow of mana and translated it into her brushstrokes. Lost in thought, a sound from behind suddenly broke his reverie. This certainly was. When did Daila come back here? Holding a heavy stone aimed at his head. Derek didn't hold back either. He drew the sword at his side. He deftly knocked the stone aside, causing her to fall. Daila gritted her teeth as her attempt was exposed. He looked at her coldly, a red gleam flashing in his eyes. I admire your courage. Knowing it wouldn't be easy to escape the pursuit, you came back to attack. That was no easy choice. Daila tried to get up and run, but couldn't. Something seemed to hold her back. Derek sneered, reminding her, you don't have the strength to run anymore. He raised his sword and granted Daila a mercy. Any last words? She seemed to accept the truth and let out a laugh. He asked with a brief sadness, why are you so obsessed with noble blood? At that question, her heart tightened. Daila's face was full of bitterness for herself. Then what else do I have besides it? Without this noble blood, I'm completely empty. She clenched her fist and struck the cold ground in hatred. Magic, magic, magic. Looking up at him, Daila's eyes flooded with tears. Do you think I haven't tried? I tried until I nearly died. What am I supposed to do? Derek was momentarily silenced. She dropped to her knees, pouring her anger into the cold ground. If magic, painting, everything is rejected, if I become a failure, Daila's eyes narrowed with resentment. Then aside from this blood, what do I have? If I lose this, I will. Her words rang out like an accusation. What will I become? Derek pressed his lips together, unable to answer her. The sword in his hand glinted once more. Daila paid no attention. Her eyes were filled only with tears now. Under the bright moon, Derek raised the sword and nodded. I've heard you clearly. Through tear-filled eyes, he said his farewell. Goodbye. In the blink of an eye, pale patches of light swept Derek's figure away into the distance. Daila bowed her head in fear and squeezed her eyes shut. She bit her lip as if accepting her fate, then slowly opened her eyes to look at the world. Among sharp ice slabs, a sword had pierced through, standing upright. Daila looked around dazed, as if unable to make sense of things. It was him. He was still there, forming a circle around where she sat. Daila stared at the hand, radiating a faint glow, trembling. Magic! Seeing everything calm, he sheathed his sword at his side. Derek bowed earnestly. You've been through a lot, miss. Forgive my rudeness. Daila stopped crying and looked up at him with hopeful eyes. Seeing that expression, Derek explained, although this is only a manifestation of mana, and not truly a spell, you did very well. Once again, Daila was driven to fury by it. All the long-held restraint finally found release, and she burst into loud sobs. One loud, one quiet. A pair of cries turned the black night tumultuous. The moon hid behind the clouds, silently witnessing it all. Derek sat her on a log and explained, this is the Wild School. Daila asked, the Wild School? As he bandaged her leg, he answered her question. Yes, most nobles follow the disciplined school. All schools are similar in essence, but their training methods differ vastly. She listened seriously as he explained. Miss Daila belongs to the Wild School, but was forced to learn the disciplined school's theory, which caused the problem. It's not that the clothes don't fit. You're trying to stuff yourself into a suit that's too tight. Hearing that, Daila, skeptical, asked, how do you know? How did you realize I'm of the Wild School? I saw your paintings, miss. You sensed the mana drifting in nature and sketched it onto canvas. He kept his head down, focused on his task, and not on her gaze. Mages born to the Wild School usually sense mana in nature from a young age. Daila's mood softened somewhat. She was no longer sniffling. After ensuring she was fine, Derek brushed off her clothes to help her stand. Okay, you can walk now. Daila felt reassured. Not bad. This much is, Derek took a few steps forward. Although you've emitted mana, there's still a long way to go. Tomorrow I'll teach you how to use it naturally. Only when he was about to leave did she dare to speak. Too shy to respond, Derek averted his face. Daila pretended indifference and said, "Thank you." He neither refused nor replied further. Finally he called to her, "Let's go." Daila happily moved closer. I'm coming." They talked together under the moon. One asked, the other answered in harmony. "By the way, did you paint that sunset yourself?" "I don't remember. It's been a long time since I held a brush." "It's a perfect piece, a masterpiece of mine. You're the first to recognize its value." The next day, bright sunlight streamed through the window. Daila stared in bewilderment at the mana appearing on her hands. Those streams of light shimmered with wonder. Her eyes were focused, giving them her full attention. Suddenly what appeared were clouds of gray-black smoke, making Daila worry. This isn't right. Outside, the maids were passing by her door. Suddenly Daila threw the door open, startling the maid, knocking the water in her hands over. The water splashed everywhere by inertia, soaking Daila's dress. The maid stammered, "Sorry, Miss Daila. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." Daila shot her a killing look. The maid hurriedly knelt and banged her head, pleading, "I deserve to die. Please spare me this once." Instead, Daila calmly advised, "Be careful." This left the maid confused. "What? Why didn't she hit me? She just said that and left." The other maids gathered to help and whispered, "Are you okay? Were you hit?" "No, Miss only said that. What happened last night when she went out?" Meanwhile, in Derek's room, he was still fast asleep. Daila hurriedly pounded on the door, calling him awake. "Derek! Derek! Derek!" Eyes heavy with sleep, opened the door. "What's the matter?" The steward had come to calm her. "Miss, you should keep decorum. This isn't appropriate." Daila paid no mind and only said to him, "Teach me how to control the mana that just awakened. I tried on my own, and it didn't work." The steward panicked at once. "She awakened mana already?" Seeing Derek not answer, she urged, "You promised to teach me today. Hurry up." He suddenly slammed the door, leaving only one line. "Please come back in the afternoon." Daila only smiled faintly without any anger, bringing the steward to tears of relief. At last the miss has. True to her nature, she couldn't help herself and began pounding on the door. "Hey, who are you to order me around? Open the door. I said teach me now." The knocking continued outside, but he calmly ignored it and lay back down to sleep. "Hey, open up." Daila angrily muttered, "Crazy fool." Scene shift to the palace early the next morning. Ray walked slowly down the corridor. Two maids sweeping nearby exchanged gossip with wide eyes. "Have you heard? Miss Daila hasn't smashed a single plate these past days." The other maid nodded. "That's right. This morning I spilled water and didn't get scolded." A blonde maid covered her mouth and whispered, "No, I heard Miss Daila awaken mana." The other gasped, Oh my God, really?" Just then Ray passed by and paused. Ray turned, eyes cold as he glanced at them. "What were you talking about?" Scene shifts to the study, the scratch of pens audible. Duplian hesitantly said, "Daila awaken mana?" Valerian replied, "Yes, father. I confirmed it with the steward and the servants several times." He showed little expression and simply said, "How fortunate." Ray looked at him now with a somewhat serious face. "Don't be quick to celebrate just because she awakened mana, father." Valerian, hearing that tone, couldn't help but shout, "Hey, your sister awakened mana, and you don't even praise her. What's wrong with you?" Duplian frowned slightly. Ray paid him no mind and turned to his father. "Do you remember all the mischief she's caused? Do you want to overlook sending her to the convent for a little achievement?" He lowered his eyes, thoughtful, and did not reply. Scene change. The weather today looks very nice. Daila sat on the bed pouting. Derek propped his chin and looked at her. "Are you joking?" Daila turned her back to him, tone sulky. "I'm not joking. I'm angry." Derek awkwardly scratched her head. No matter how angry she was, it was pointless. Daila immediately retorted, "It's not anger, it's fury." He lowered his eyes and counseled, "Being sulky won't solve anything. Everything has its order." Finally, she couldn't hold back and raised a clenched fist angrily. "It's not sulking. I'm angry." Derek froze, pressing his lips in thought. Daila couldn't hold it either and turned away first. She hesitated. "Fine, call it sulking then." Derek stepped over and pulled out a chair. He sat down, eyes impassive as he glanced at Daila. "Awakening mana doesn't give you the right to be aggressive. Otherwise, you'll exhaust yourself. I'm speaking from my own experience. Studying is important, but rest is too. You've rested enough. Now it's time to study. She puckered her lips, voice dripping sarcasm. Yes, yes, teacher is always right. The magic instructor from Lushur has arrived. Yes, yes. Derek's gaze suddenly darkened. He looked at her coldly and said, So do you want me to teach in a non-traditional way? Unflattering images of him surfaced in Daila's memory. Derek began the lesson, looking at her hands. Today we'll practice controlling mana. Once you master this ability, Miss, you can quickly become proficient in first-tier magic. The Wild School isn't bound by the system and is well suited to self-study. Its teaching emphasizes freedom far more than the disciplined school. Honestly, you, Miss, are very suited to the Wild School. Hearing the compliment, Daila stammered. What did you say? Derek looked at her and said seriously, As I said, your free-spirited nature fits the Wild School well, and with noble blood, you have abundant talent. One of her ears perked up, catching every word. Daila flushed slightly and hesitated. I have talent. He cast his eyes down and replied, Yes, awakening mana and producing that wall of ice clearly shows innate talent. She toyed with her fingers and casually asked, So, I'm a genius then? Derek immediately objected. Talent and genius are two different things. Daila pouted, They're basically the same. He said again, No, completely different. Daila gave up arguing and complained, Oh fine, you're right, you win. Ray was standing outside the room at that moment and had heard the entire conversation. He ground his teeth and snorted coldly. Time passed within the palace. Daila burst into the room, excitedly exclaiming, Derek, I awakened mana, but I can't control it. A few days later, she ran up to him again, boasting, Derek, look, I can use frost, but it feels so strange. Time kept moving. Daila chased him down the corridor, shouting, Derek, I can sense mana, but it's so confusing. One afternoon again, under the tree. Derek, what are you doing here? Daila stood with her hands on her hips, questioning him. You should be near the annex. Derek replied nonchalantly. Did you think I lent you the magic books so you'd study? Well, yes, that's what they're for. Daila said no more and grabbed his wrist, pulling him along. Hey, what now? Like you said before, I've succeeded in releasing mana. Come look quickly. Inside Valerian's study, the door swung open. Derek entered. Did you call for me? Valerian nodded and gestured. You're here? Sit down and let's talk. He wasted no words and asked directly. How has Daila been lately? Derek lowered his eyes and replied casually. There's considerable progress, but mastering first-level magic will still take more time. Valerian nodded. Understood. Perhaps my mother will return after next week's social gathering. I'll tell you in advance, she's not easy. The people in a manor are fine for now, but nobles generally don't like commoners holding important positions. Do you understand? Derek looked Valerian straight in the eye and replied, I'll remember. Did you call me out just to say this? He suddenly pressed his lips together and grew pensive. Valerian stood up, walked to the window, and slowly said, I am the heir of the Duplian family. Being head of the family means being tolerant and protective of every member. To do that, one must treat everyone sincerely. But how difficult it is. The human heart is deep and complicated. I wish everyone shared the same thoughts and values, but reality is not like that. Derek looked at his back and asked bluntly, So what are you getting at? He clasped Valerian's hand tightly. As soon as he turned his head, tears welled up. Daila won't play with me anymore, Derek. Upon hearing this, he darkened and shot a glance at Valerian. He began to complain. When she was little, she always laughed and played with me. That image is still vivid in my heart. Is there any other child in this world as angelic as her? So, Derek, do you have any way? A way to win back Daila's favor. Derek slowly took a sip of tea and said, Why are you asking me about this? Without hesitation, Valerian replied, Daila only hangs around you anyway. No sooner had he finished speaking than Daila's voice rang out. Derek, where are you? Valerian suddenly produced something and held it out before Derek. Nothing. Look at this. I learned to make dolls from maids. In his hands was an absolutely ugly doll. Valerian proudly boasted. See? Isn't it identical to Daila? Do you feel the love from your brother yet? Derek glowered at him and said bluntly. Are you trying to curse her? Valerian pressed his lips together, tears threatening to fall again. Derek, you really don't understand these things. Time passed again, and on a fine day at the palace, the woman arrived. She looked at Derek and said, I've heard a lot about you. They said they had found an exceptionally talented magic tutor. Pleasure to meet you. I am Miriella Devil Duplian. If you don't mind, I'd like to send a small gift to your domain. He replied frankly without embarrassment. I don't belong to any nobility. She was slightly taken aback, and he added, I am a commoner. Miriella widened her eyes in surprise. A commoner. Time rewound to a week earlier. Aislinn bowed her head and said to Derek, I'm glad I brought you to the manor. She smiled with narrowed eyes. As her sister, I want to stay with Daila, but there's still much to handle in Ebelstein, so I'm leaving her in your care. Derek didn't look up and replied, Yes, I understand. Jaden patted his shoulder from behind. Derek, Our Lady entrusted her to you, and you answer so curtly. The two boarded the carriage. Looking back at him, Jaden smiled as a reminder. Finish up quickly and go home. If Beldern finds out, he'll blow up. Aislinn also gave a soft smile. Thanks to you, Derek. The carriage slowly rolled away. Aislinn suddenly remembered something and clapped a hand over her mouth in panic. Oh my, I almost forgot. Jaden hurriedly replied to her. Yes, miss? What did you want to say? She looked back through the window. My mother returns next week. I forgot to tell Derek. He looked at her with curiosity. Is that something that needs mentioning? Aislinn hesitated. Well, she thought to herself, my mother is a bit. Scene shifts to a room. The door is thrown wide open. A woman in a blue dress enters. Aislinn thought to herself, it's hard to describe, like a goddess of destruction. Miriella slammed her hand down on the Duplian study table in anger. A commoner as a tutor? What is this about? Faced with her anger, Duplian cut in coolly. I heard you perfectly well. Lower your voice. Miriella fumed. Now is not the time to debate that. Daila is Daila, our beloved youngest daughter. At her outburst, he slowly removed his glasses. Miriella, you know me. I don't care much for hiring commoners. Duplian reluctantly explained. But all the prestigious magic tutors have failed. Miriella slammed both hands on the table, grinding her teeth in anger. Even so, how could you bring in some mercenary like that? He added, finding a skilled magic tutor isn't easy. Besides, Derek was recommended by Aislinn. Miriella covered her forehead with her hand and turned. No, sir, there must at least be minimum standards. She turned to Duplian and suggested, right, you could bring my brother Flameheart here. He was busy before, but not now. Daila has awakened her magic. Flameheart could teach her. His face showed no expression as he replied, bring a garrison commander in as a tutor? Do we run the domain recklessly like that? Offended, Miriella shouted. What about the nobility of Ebelstein? Do they run around recklessly too? It's a battlefield as well. She pointed angrily. Among the nobility, a tutor is the most important calling card. Yet you hired an unknown commoner? Do you want Daila to be laughed at when she enters noble society? Someone pushed the door open. Valerian entered to mediate. Mother, calm down. You didn't come here to argue with father, did you? Miriella turned to him and said softly, back off, Valerian. This cannot be taken lightly. A voice interjected. Ultimately, does that commoner even qualify to teach Daila? That is the real issue, mother. Hearing the voice, Miriella and Valerian both turned to look. When they saw who it was, she smiled and called, Ray. He stood with his hands behind his back, his face stern. A commoner daring to teach magic to nobles is unusual, but if he truly has the ability, then there's nothing to worry about. Ray proposed to Duplian, Father, let me test Derek. If I beat him in a magic duel, then he will concede. He's a genuine mage. He said nothing more, merely stared at him. Then Ray asked, So what challenge shall it be? Upon hearing this, Valerian looked at him in puzzlement. Ray added, If Derek is a good tutor, then Daila stands to gain much. I'll test his abilities. After hearing his son's words, he fell silent and said nothing further. After Ray left, Valerian hurriedly chased after him. Ray. When he stopped, Valerian angrily demanded, What are you thinking? A magic duel, Ray softly reminded him. Brother, do you really believe Daila has changed? Have you forgotten what she did? Valerian explained, She's still our sister. Blood ties deserve protection. Hearing him, Ray ground his teeth. Blood ties. Suddenly he shouted in anger. That blood will drag the whole family into the abyss. Haven't her actions been enough? If she enters noble society, everything will be over. Valerian frowned. Is that really how you feel, Ray? He turned and walked away. The one who crossed the line was always Daila. She only deserves to be locked away in the secondary villa. He watched Ray's retreating figure and fell into thought. Ray left Valerian behind with a resolute gaze and a sense of helplessness. Outside, a bird perched on a branch chirped cheerfully by the window frame. Daila pushed the door open from outside and called, "Derek." He was sitting on the bed, leisurely reading. Seeing her like that, he wondered, what's the matter so early in the morning? Daila tossed a rolled piece of paper onto the open book. Derek unrolled it. She crossed her arms and said, "If I lose this magic duel, you will be dismissed." His eyes scanned the paper, and he replied, "Yes, I know. Lord Ray is already a fully proficient one-star mage, so it will probably be difficult." Daila shouted angrily, "Is that all you've got? You'll be fired." Derek rolled the paper back up in his hand. "I'm a mercenary. I take the job, finish it, and collect my pay." He added calmly, "I've already been paid for that work." Hearing that, Daila was taken aback. "Are you really serious?" 1 week later, a mixed crowd was entering. Duplien and Miriella slowly took their seats inside the stands. Seeing them, Derek bowed. "You're here," and he slowly raised his head. Seeing that expression, Duplien thought quietly. He doesn't show any tension. He's very confident, isn't he? He sat in his place, thinking, in this situation he's still calm. Perhaps I judged him too hastily. Footsteps approached from afar. From his attire, it was clear the person was Ray. He entered with a brooding air, fists clenched, thinking, this isn't a simple magic match. Today, I'll crush Derek. Ray slowly ascended the dais. "Daila, I'll make you regret to your bones." On the other side, Daila in a red dress was also approaching the dais. She lifted her head and stared ahead with an emotionless gaze. Returning to the conversation between Daila and Derek, "Do you really want that? What about everything else? Does that not matter?" As he spoke and moved, she could feel it. Her mana had aligned into orbit. She couldn't cast a one-star spell yet, but it wouldn't be long. Derek pulled his cloak about him. "After all, you bear Duplien blood. Why say these things all of a sudden?" He glanced at Daila. "I told you, studying the wild school means focusing on self-teaching rather than relying on inheritance from others." Her eyes brimming with tears, she snapped at him. "Fine, so what? Why are you saying these things now?" Seeing her like that, he could only fall silent. Daila's expression turned somber. "Derek, I know I'm not a good student." She bit her lip to hold back tears. "But I want to keep learning magic from you. I don't want anyone else to teach me." Derek was silent for a moment, then slowly put on his gloves. "I should tell you first, I don't know the rules or rituals of noble magic duels, and I've never tried them." He glanced at Daila standing behind him. "But I can teach you how to win. Do you want to win?" Daila had grown up amid sneers and taunts, people smiling on the outside while speaking words that cut. It seems Miss Daila has no mana, right? Not even the famous tutors can help. Oh my, how could the Duplien house have someone like that? The Dupliens are over, always causing trouble. The older siblings are talented. Why is the youngest like this? The Grand Duke must be distressed. Thank goodness for Iceland. Children are a curse, better not born at all. Remembering those words, her eyes filled with resolve. Please help me win. And in the end, Daila did not come here as Ray's sister, nor as the Duplien youngest child. Derek's gaze followed each step as Daila advanced toward the dais. Now she stood in the arena as Derek's pupil. At the practice arena, when the two had taken their positions, the chief steward cleared his throat. The Ebelstein-Kelbrum high-level mage dual sound law will be enforced. Whichever side triggers General Pelram's protective circle first will be declared the loser. Then the match begins. Derek thought, General Pelram's protective circle activates when a user suffers major damage, and it simultaneously nullifies the opponent's magic. I wonder how nobles fight using such an expensive device. They must be very well off. The duration is 10 minutes. It seems Ray intends to finish the duel before time runs out. Ray decided to go all out, striking Daila head-on. He muttered an incantation and began channeling magic. Daila remained calm, standing before the mana sphere Ray had formed. Ray thought, sorry, but you'll have to return to the secondary house. Ray launched a magical wind blade at Daila. The girl calmly waited until the attack neared, then lightly dodged. Seeing her dodge so smoothly, Ray grew resentful. How dare she? Ray continued to hurl a flurry of spells at Daila. Derek sat below watching and thinking. He channels one-star magic very skillfully, but he seems a complete amateur in real combat. Forcing a change in the trajectory of spells must have cost a lot of mana. Ray's windsword strike was easily blocked by Daila's ice wall. He thought inwardly, that's not even high-level magic, just the materialization of pure mana. Does the girl intend to use those tricks to stop my spells? Ray produced even more magic orbs. I just need to crush those petty tricks. Try to withstand this. Daila recalled what Derek had instructed. A mercenary's combat techniques differ from a noble's. We do not regard fairness as a virtue. We focus solely on victory. It is far from the ceremonial rules of noble duels. So if she wins, she may have to endure much gossip. However, we can manufacture a result where you are the victor. Are you truly okay with that? Daila's face filled with determination as she said loudly, "Of course." Back in the fight, Daila deliberately dodged Ray's attacks. Among mercenaries, there are always those who win despite disparities in strength. Most of those people do not engage in formal duels, but in warfare. Warfare here includes controlling the battlefield and exploiting the terrain. In other words, using any means and methods necessary to secure victory. Even the opponent's negligence can be exploited. Facing a direct strike, Daila gritted her teeth and erected an ice wall to defend. Ray thought to himself, it's over. Daila felt a chill run down her spine. She turned around and saw Ray's attack had been redirected, coming straight for her back. With a crash, dust and debris flew everywhere. Derek's face remained frighteningly calm. Miriella, worried, shouted, "Daila, Butler, what are you doing? Stop the match now. Daila will get hurt." Duke Duplian, seated beside her, spoke up. "Sit down. The match is not over yet." Miriella asked, "What did you just say?" Duke Duplian reassured her, "She's not hit. General Pelram's circle hasn't activated." The Duke cast a glance toward Derek, thinking to himself, that man didn't even flinch. Had he anticipated this? In the haze of smoke and dust, Ray thought, clearly the girl was struck by the wind blade. Yet the protective circle didn't trigger. Where did it go? Daila knew she couldn't defeat her brother by fair means, so she resorted to guerrilla tactics, hiding beneath the wooden floor of the arena to attack. From beneath the ground, a pillar of ice shot up into the air. Ray was startled, but managed to dodge just in time. Ray gritted his teeth and thought, attacking from under the floor? According to Kelbram Hall rules, leaving the arena results in a loss. Seeing the chief steward shake his head, Ray smiled wryly. So that means beneath the floor doesn't count as leaving the combat area? They surely never imagined such a dirty tactic would be used in a magic duel among nobles. While Ray was preoccupied thinking, Daila continued erecting ice stalactites to attack. Ray struggled to dodge, thinking, it's very hard to aim when you can't see the target. Is that girl just gambling on landing a single lucky hit? There was not a trace of so-called noble etiquette in this match. Ray looked down into the hole in the floor and met Daila's eyes. That gaze. Right, I've seen it before. They were unnaturally calm. It was identical to when my brother grabbed Derek by the throat. Ray glanced toward the stands. There's no way Daila came up with this on her own. This tactic was your idea, right, Derek? Derek shrugged off his cloak, struck a cool pose, his face solemn as if he had a stomachache. Then I'll play according to your tactic. Watching from above, Miriella shouted, is Daila crawling under the floor? Into that dusty place. She admonished Ray. What are you doing, dear? Stop the match at once. Duplian stroked his chin and said quietly, she's not breaking any rules. Let's observe a bit longer. He peered down intently, his mind occupied with its own thoughts. Below, Daila watched and assessed. I can see the flows of mana. Above, Ray continued reciting his incantations. As he murmured the spell, another pillar of ice erupted from beneath his feet. Ray cursed inwardly in anger. Every time I chant, the girl attacks from under the ground. I can't keep going like this. He then turned his gaze toward the flagpole before him. Beneath the ground, Daila sensed his mana flow had stopped. He's definitely preparing something. What the hell is he doing? If he dares chant again, I'll strike immediately. Watching from outside, Steward Delon was also shocked. No, young master. He said this because Ray had climbed up onto the flagpole. He looked down and assessed. At this distance, the girl cannot detect my mana. But jumping down now is impossible. There was only one option left. Then he reached out and fired an arrow. I'll destroy that floor without needing to chant. Immediately, the arrow shot out and struck the flagpole he was standing on. This made Derek, watching from above, narrow his eyes slightly. The pole snapped cleanly in two. Ray used the momentum to kick the pole violently. The impact created a large breach in the floor. Observing from above, Lady Miriella startled and called his name. The collision sent dust and debris flying thickly around. Ray tried to glance forward to gather information. At that moment, Daila's blurred figure appeared through the dust. He reached out and summoned another magical arrow. The arrow lunged forward like a gust of wind. Struck by this attack, Daila's expression turned serious. She reached out to summon magic to block the strike, but at that moment her mana would not respond. This caused her to panic slightly. The arrow continued to streak toward her. Now she could only twist aside to avoid the incoming attack. After that, she kept moving to maintain distance. Ray looked at her and calculated. If I close the gap, I'll have the advantage. If I can fire one more magical arrow. While he was still thinking, Daila lunged and kicked him hard in the chest. Her eyes were full of determination. Taking a direct kick, Ray braced one hand on the ground, breathing heavily. Daila grabbed a handful of earth and hurled it straight at him. Ray was furious, but unable to do anything. Then the girl climbed up onto the arena floor. Over here, Ray gritted his teeth. Damn it, stomping and throwing sand? Is she doing that because she's run out of mana? She's fighting with everything she has to win, even though it's impossible. Is that really you, Daila? This match is to prove your pride. Then I'll use all my strength to face you. As your brother, after regaining his resolve, he also climbed up onto the arena floor. Daila put her hands to her head. Drops of blood began to run down her cheek. Derek's words echoed in her mind. Think of it like painting with a brush. Mana is the paint, and the incantation is the brush. Use the brush to gather the streaks of mana and paint a picture. And that is magic. The girl's eyes were full of surprise as she saw the bands of magical light appear before her. Back in the present, she closed her eyes to regain her composure. Then mana began to surge from her body. Mana is the paint. The incantation is the brush. She could feel mana spinning at the tips of her fingers. I'll use these colors to paint a picture. That is magic. Sensing the mana, Daila was now able to form a magic circle at her feet and conjure a spear of magic. This made the steward startle and exclaim, "That's..." Even Lady Miriella was moved to tears of joy. "My dear Daila, that's first-tier magic. Don't face her head-on," Ray thought. An ice spear? She actually did it, Daila. The girl began to control the spear in her hand. On that side, Ray did not hesitate either and summoned countless magical arrows. He affirmed to himself, even so, the outcome can't be changed. Even if you use first-tier magic, I'm still one step ahead of you. My attack will hit you first. Victory will be mine. Daila did not hesitate. She pointed straight ahead and sent the spear hurtling forward. On the other side, Ray shouted and launched his magical arrows forward. The two attacks collided, causing a tremendously shocking explosion in the surrounding space. Watching from the stands above, Miriella called out to her anxiously. Daila, as the dust cleared, a magic circle had been summoned at the center of the arena. Both people inside it were breathing heavily from exhaustion. Derek, observing from above, also wore a somewhat grave expression. Cut to 1 year earlier at the Duke's Manor. The steward, walking behind, spoke up. "Sir, this morning a letter arrived from the Bellmeyer family. It seems to be related to this upcoming social gathering. How would you like me to handle it?" As the two walked, they happened to pass by Daila's room. She was inside, sitting absent-mindedly as if lost in thought. He saw this, but did not interrupt. Back in the present, staring at the magic barrier before her, she was a little startled. The barrier has been activated? On the opposite side, Ray also realized the problem. Standing in the stands, his expression turned somewhat sad. He thought to himself, have I lost? Unable to hold back her emotions any longer, Daila burst into tears like a child. Duplian observed everything, but remained silent. Seeing this, Miriella stepped forward and shouted, "My goodness! What on earth is this madness? This crude, disgraceful display? Are you calling this a magic duel? It's utterly ridiculous. That common-born upstart. How dare he teach this rubbish to the Duplian lady?" He recalled his youth. "My lord, I am Raymond Oswald Duplian. It is an honor to accompany you, the Duke, to the battlefield." The Duke replied, "I've heard much about you from your father. Your gaze is exactly like his, unmistakable, a look full of ambition." At that, he answered, "Thank you, my lord." Back in the present, looking into his daughter's eyes, he thought to himself, "Her gaze looks much better now, Daila." A servant hurried up from behind and called, "Miss Daila, are you all right?" They rushed forward to help. "My goodness, treat her wounds. Quickly, it must be tended to immediately." But she immediately waved them off. "No need." Then she took a few steps forward. Facing her younger sister, Ray responded somewhat, "Ah, Well done, Daila. She did not reply, only bowed her head and then turned to leave. Despite the servant's frantic pleas, "Miss, please come inside the chamber." She walked straight toward Derek. He calmly watched her. Her face seemed to be holding back something. When she could no longer restrain herself, she burst into tears once more. She clenched her fists and murmured, "I've lost. I'm sorry." He looked at her, then stood up. To reassure her, "It's all right. Failure is not unusual. I hope you can overcome this bitterness and grow stronger, miss." This encouragement did not soothe the girl's anger, and only made her cry harder. But the maid continued rushing up to her, calling, "Miss." Muriella, worried, also approached and cried out, "Oh my Daila, how did it come to this? You've been through so much lately, haven't you, my daughter?" She embraced her and comforted her. "It's all right. It's all right now. Let me tend your wound first, dear." Feeling the warmth in those words, she finally relaxed and replied, "Yes." Then she went inside with the maid. After his daughter left, the woman regained her composure and stepped up behind Derek. She did not hesitate and immediately scolded, "You low-born commoner. Do you know the crazy thing you just did? You think teaching a bit of first-tier magic makes you noble, do you?" She promptly delivered a sharp slap. She continued to curse, "You only teach filthy tricks. Don't let the pure, beautiful lily that is my daughter be sullied. How dare you make the Duchess's daughter learn such dirty, vulgar, and crude things?" As she spoke, she slapped him once more. There are things in this world that someone dark-skinned like you will never understand, that they are values to be preserved, dignity to be protected. Duplian stepped forward and turned, saying, "My dear, you see it too, right? This is no longer a magic duel. He dared teach this rubbish to our Daila." Before she could finish, a smack sounded again. This time the one who received the slap was Muriella. Duplian admonished, "Do you not realize who is behaving most rudely right now?" Seeing herself slapped by him, she was a bit flustered. "Why? This man. He's just a commoner," he affirmed. "Yes, though he is merely a commoner. But he is also the teacher of our daughter. What parent would treat their child's teacher like that?" Saying that, he faced the man and said softly, "Please forgive her. Everyone has their own way of loving their child." He contemplated for a moment and replied, "It's all right." Then he turned, "I have something to discuss with you privately. Please follow me to the reception room." Watching the two of them leave, Muriella was furious, grinding her teeth. Back in the reception room, Duplian said, "You have truly helped Daila mature excellent. As the head of this estate, I should grant you a reward worthy of your service. The highest limit a commoner is allowed to reach." He proposed, "Do you want third-tier magic?" He looked at him, thinking silently. "He can see through me. He sees things even I had not recognized. He understands my heart better than I do and makes an offer. Is this the 5-star Grand Duke's insight? If the opportunity has come, one must seize it quickly." He immediately answered, "Yes, I want it." Jason continued, "You taught Diela 1-star magic well, but among a Belstein's high society, that level is still not enough to survive." Derek also understood his meaning. At Duplian, there are many who could guide Miss Diela. Now that she has the basics, she will progress quickly. Duke Duplian then said, "What my daughter needs is not a tutor. She needs a master. You harbor an ambition that a commoner could not dream of. You understand how humiliated those proud nobles would feel. I'm overlooking that because it's you." Derek lowered his head, thinking, "The Grand Duke doesn't speak to me often, yet he knows I'm aiming beyond 3 stars, toward 4 or higher. That is what makes this man terrifying." Duke Duplian, writing on paper, continued, "However, if you persist in that intention, you cannot stay here long. You're preparing to leave, aren't you?" Derek did not need to deny it. "Yes, that's right." Suddenly, he made a very favorable offer. "It's not that I don't see your ambition, but you must teach Diela a little longer. The highest realm a commoner is allowed to reach. You crave 3-star magic, don't you?" He immediately confessed, "Yes, I do." After his private conversation with Duke Duplian, Derek went to the library to look for books. Seeing the pile of books before him left him utterly overwhelmed. Many people spend their lives obtaining 2-star spell books, yet here were only 3-star books. This alone is reason enough for me to stay at the estate. If Palai knew, he'd certainly make a fuss. The next day, Diela was in high spirits. "I'm a 1-star mage now." Derek sat there without denying it. "Since you've cast a 1-star spell once, you can be called a 1-star mage." Seeing his indifferent attitude, Diela grew angry. "That's it? You're not happy that your student achieved something?" Derek said bluntly, "Because that's hardly much of an achievement." Diela, disappointed, turned her back, and complained. You're too hard to please. Suddenly, he reminded her. It seems you've recovered a lot in 3 days, haven't you? You used to be such a crybaby back then. Diella huffed and sat down, snapping back. It was just dust in my eye. I wasn't crying. Besides, my father should have told me earlier. I thought you were about to be kicked out. Derek refocused on the lesson. Let's begin. Since you progress quickly, you'll soon learn other 1-star spells. Hearing that made Diella beam. What did you say? We'll be quick. Derek continued to praise her. Your development is remarkable. Your mana just awakened recently, yet you cast a 1-star spell already. It's rare. Diella was proud to be praised. I told you, I'm the type to do what I say. So what should we learn first? A mana arrow? That seems convenient since it needs no incantation. Or Raymond's Windblade. It looks powerful. The Freezing Spear also feels great. If I improve a bit, maybe I'll even hit Raymond. Derek cut her off. We'll practice mana manifestation. Diella lost some enthusiasm. Why? Aren't we practicing 1-star spells? Derek explained. There are many reasons, but foundations are the most important. A simple explanation about mana drained the life out of Diella. Fine. If you say so, we'll do it. You fooled me into thinking I'd learn a 1-star spell. Noticing Derek staring at her, she grew puzzled. Why are you staring at me like that? Is something on my face? Derek revealed. I'm just surprised at how obedient the lady is. Diella, offended, turned her face away. What kind of person do you think I am? I respected your words from the start. Derek reminded her. From the start? The lady poured dirty water on my head twice. Diella fell silent, too embarrassed to speak loud. You still remember that? Derek said bluntly. Hard to forget. So she pretended to twirl around to distract him. What a beautiful day. Mana manifestation sounds fun. I want to do it now. Mana manifestation. Yay. Seeing this girl still act like a child made Derek smile and sigh. Before long, night had fallen. Diella lay on her back on the ground, panting after a day of training. Derek walked over and said, It seems the lady will be busy soon. She struggled to sit up. You're at it too, huh? Starting next week, I have to study etiquette as well. Derek said again, Isn't that a good thing? You've learned a 1-star spell. Now you'll be educated like a true noble. But Diella was completely the opposite. You think that's good? Noble etiquette, basics, foreign languages, geography, history, botany, piano, embroidery. I don't understand why I have to learn all that. How can Aisline endure all of it? Derek explained. That's why she's called the flower of Duplian and the center of Abelstein High Society. Diella hesitated and confessed. I just want to study magic. He replied lightly. Then just study. Duplian hired me, so there's plenty of time. She lowered her voice. I wonder if there's really that much time. Derek asked. Who can fire me? Diella was a little embarrassed. My father has accepted you, but my mother won't leave it be. He was puzzled. Why would the lady want to drive me away? She revealed. Learning from you makes me drift from noble dignity. She fears I'll become like a mercenary. Even that hand-to-hand fight was far from the dignity nobles pursue. Derek remained very calm. Then it's simple. Silencing the lady won't be hard. Remove her excuse. The next morning, Miriella was extremely worried. I didn't expect the child to end up with such a terrifying teacher. My poor child. In her imagination, Derek would tie up a guard and then begin the lesson. Watch closely, Diella. This is the mercenary style. The second lesson had Diella dragging a whole wild boar into the estate to intimidate others. So this is the famed Abelstein High Society, causing everyone to cry out in fear. It's Diella, Catherine Duplian. Imagining this, she buried her head in frustration. What could that lowborn teach Diella? Even if her husband accepted it, she was the lady of the house. She had to find a way. As Miriella opened the door to the room, Diella spoke up. Mother. She didn't bother to look and closed her eyes to enjoy it. Oh, Diella, even if people say you're immature, I still love when you smile in my arms. But unlike other times, this time Diella didn't run to embrace her like a child. She looked every bit the noble lady. Diella held 2 dresses and bowed gently. Did you sleep well last night, Mother? Because I needed to recover, I couldn't leave my room. I'm sorry I missed a chance to talk with you. I have many things I want to share with you, but unfortunately this morning I had piano lessons. Miriella was stunned, then stammered in reply. I understand. Diella bowed politely and said, Then I'll take my leave. I'm busy with class now, Mother. Miriella, still shocked, awkwardly asked, Etiquette classes haven't started yet, right? They begin next week, don't they? Like Aisline. Diella replied gently. Yes, Mother. Thanks to your concern, I'm really looking forward to them. Miriella had to let her go. Go quickly, or you'll be late. But as Diella left, a servant accidentally dropped something in front of her. Diella gently asked, "An, are you hurt? Don't overexert yourself." The servant was as shocked as Miriella. "Yes, Miss Diella." And so Diella walked on, ahead of all the astonished gazes. Comic. Arriving at the Abelstein noble quarter, a voice rang out. "Lately it feels like the Rosia salon is always filled with laughter. Miss Eislein, I was really worried at the last gathering because your husband seemed heavily burdened with concerns." Hearing that, Eislein was startled and replied, "Oh, is that so? I didn't mean to make you worry. Most of the things I was worried about have been resolved, so I feel much better now." Opposite her, the red-haired girl was the younger daughter of the Belmiard family, Alante Alphione Belmiard. Hearing this, Alante relaxed. "What a relief. When I heard the rumor that you left the noble quarter to save someone, I was very worried." Eislein smiled and answered, "Thank you for worrying about me, Miss Alante. Actually, my younger sister Diella needs a magic tutor. I was a bit busy because I had to find one myself." Alante thought to herself, "What? Eislein went personally to find one? What does that mean? How talented must that tutor be for Miss Duplian herself to seek him out?" Beside her, the white-haired girl added, "You said what? Your younger sister?" This girl was Denise Linier Veltus, the younger daughter of the Veltus family. Eislein explained, "Yes, that's right. When I met Diella at the estate not long ago, she had become such a proper young lady that I could hardly recognize her. She even awakened single-star magic, and her manners are neat and composed. That made me feel I need to work harder." Hearing that, Denise was a bit thoughtful. How strange. Eislein is raising her own sister? Wasn't Diella supposed to be hidden by the Duplian family? Then she spoke up. "It seems you found a good magic tutor." Eislein nodded in agreement. "Yes, he has no status, but he's certainly exceptionally capable. It was truly worth going all the way to the Beldon Mercenary Company to find him personally." This startled both noble girls. A mercenary? Thinking back, Denise suddenly said, "Wait, isn't she the reason our estate's chef ran away from the Duplian house?" Recalling what the chef once said, "Miss Alante is truly so kind." Alante sipped her tea and continued thinking. Unexpectedly, that tutor not only reformed that notorious thug, but also turned him into a single-star mage. A faint smile of delight played at her lips. She turned to ask Miss Eislein, "May I ask the name of that magic tutor?" Eislein was a little surprised by the question and replied, "Pardon." Alante continued, "If he's tutoring Miss Diella, he'll be even more famous in the future, right? At least I'd like to know his name in advance." Hearing that, Eislein happily introduced, "Ah, his name is Derek." Returning to the Duplian estate. At this time, Diella was sitting and talking with her mother. She began recounting her training over the past period. "Derek has also been teaching me some etiquette. Learning etiquette by myself is really difficult." Opposite her, Miriella praised, "Is that so? It's admirable that you studied on your own." She denied it. "Not exactly studying on my own. Rather, Derek taught me." Her mother asked, "What was the hardest part when you were learning?" She giggled and replied, "Most things were very difficult. I can get this far thanks to Derek." However, Derek's name kept appearing in Diella's words, which made Miriella somewhat angry inside. But outwardly she remained cordial. I understand." After stepping outside, her emotions finally surfaced. "That damn Derek. How many more times will that name show up? Honestly, I don't know what he's done to the girl, but I won't let this go on. There must be a way to deal with it." Outside in the garden, the household staff were happily chatting. "Miss Diella has been very kind to the servants lately. She's become gentler." The old gardener nearby replied, "These days Miss Diella looks very happy. She's changed a lot in just a few weeks." The butler had a similar observation. "It's truly surprising. That's an air I've only ever seen in Miss Eislein. Perhaps at last she's trying to become a proper young lady. Now we can sense a noble bearing from Miss Diella." Everywhere they went they kept hearing Derek's name, which made Miriella furious. She could only grit her teeth. The scene shifted to evening. Outside the manor, Derek was sitting and training with the new magic book he had received. After feeling a slight change within his body, he reached his hand forward and began to cast a technique. Sensing an immense power surging through him, Derek gritted his teeth and endured intense pain. And the energy on his arm gradually dissipated into the air. He breathed heavily, utterly exhausted, and slumped to the ground. Then someone stepped up behind him, catching his attention. It was Ray. He wore a friendly expression. "Oh, sorry. Am I interrupting your practice?" Although very tired, Derek replied politely, "Not at all. What brings you here?" The two of them then sat down to talk. Ray turned to ask, "I want to talk a bit about Diella." He nodded in response, "All right." Then he glanced at the book in Derek's hands. "But before that, isn't that a 3-star magic book?" Derek nodded in confirmation. "Yes. Duke Duplian lent it to me." Hearing this surprised Ray a little. "Your father lent you that?" Derek answered, "Yes. It's currently above my level, but there's no harm in studying ahead." Recalling what Duke Duplian had said enough. He's a true mage. Hearing that, Ray understood the matter. "I see. Truly impressive." Then he returned to the main topic. "So what is it about Miss Diella that you wanted to talk to me about?" Ray, a little embarrassed, began to explain. "Oh, right, that matter. It's actually a bit complicated. But what do young ladies like these days?" Faced with this odd question, Derek looked at him but did not answer immediately. Ray continued on his own. "If I sew a doll that looks like her, would she like it?" Thinking of the doll that had been in Diella's room before, Derek answered resolutely, "Definitely not." Sweat drenched Ray's face from embarrassment. "All right. Yes, I suppose that's true. I'm not saying I'll actually make one or anything." Derek replied, "Yes. I don't think it's particularly promising either. Should we go inside now? If you've finished training." After that, he followed Ray into the manor. While the two were walking, Ray spoke up. "Anyway, I'm very grateful to you. The atmosphere in the household has been very good lately. Even Valerian has focused on managing the territory. And my father, though he doesn't show it, seems very pleased." Derek asked curiously, "Really? It's hard to read his feelings." Ray smiled and replied, "Everyone in this manor would agree with that. I suppose I should accept what I need to accept. People must change, especially children at that age. I don't know whether I failed to notice earlier or deliberately avoided it. But since Diella has changed, I think I should change too. This is thanks to you, Derek." "Thank you." He felt a bit embarrassed at that thank you. Up ahead, Ray returned to the topic about Diella. "By the way, Diella's magic feels like a different kind of magic." The man behind asked, "Can you tell the difference?" Ray replied, "Yes. It's like painting a picture." He thought to himself, "A genius is still a genius." Truly typical of the Duplian line. Noting this, he nodded in confirmation. "Yes. Miss Diella uses mana in the natural school's manner." Ray replied, "Ah, the natural school? I've heard of it." He continued, "The way each person uses mana is very different. Once she reaches a certain orbit, reality will reveal itself without my needing to explain anything. And at that level, a tutor's intervention can even become an obstacle." Understanding his meaning, Ray answered, "I understand. At that level, her moment to shine will come." Cut to 2 months later. At this time, a small flower appeared on the table in Diella's room. She wondered, "What's this? Why is there a flower?" The servant behind replied, "They bloomed so beautifully, I brought one to pin in the miss's hair." Holding the flower and breathing in its scent, Diella was very pleased. "They smell wonderful. It feels like spring has been here for months. I've been able to use single-star magic comfortably, and I've also grown closer to the servants. Perhaps I've missed so many things until now. I think it's all thanks to Master Derek." The servant behind replied, "I was wondering why Miss looks so cheerful today. Is today magic lesson day?" Diella answered, "Yes. Do I look very happy?" The servant took the flower and said, "Then I must pin it on nicely." From outside, a teasing voice called, "Ah, save me an extra flower so I can give it to Master Derek." The sprig in her hand suddenly fell to the floor. Tears welled at the corner of her eyes. "What do you mean by that, Derek?" He and Valerian were standing at her door. He explained, "As the Miss has heard, I have nothing left to teach Miss Diella. The law of the seasons is always like that. No winter lasts forever, and no spring is eternal." Back in the Duke's study, he offered his assessment. "You may have already noticed, but Miss Diella belongs to the natural school. And among them, her trait is unusually strong. If I continue to intervene in her affairs, I'll only end up clipping her wings." As a mage himself, he understood his point. "I understand. So you have no reason to remain at this manor any longer." He nodded in confirmation. "Yes, that's right." He fell silent for a few seconds in thought. Then he rose from his chair, walked to the window, and began to open his heart. "Because of you, many things have changed. My grandson, also thanks to you, has allowed my daughter to grow up. I was too absorbed in managing the territory to be a good father. But now I feel somewhat at ease." "So, when will you leave?" He replied, "I heard Miss Eislein will soon visit the manor and then return to Abelstein. I plan to leave with her carriage then." The Duke replied, "I understand. Will you return the library key?" He answered, Yes. I will return the magic books I'm studying, and I'll hand the key over through the steward. The Duke interrupted. No need for that. Return the key right now. Saying that, he cast a thoughtful glance down at the magic book lying beside him. The Duke continued. If there's nothing else, you may leave now. He seemed to have more to say, but couldn't bring himself to speak. He immediately bowed in farewell, then turned and left. As soon as he stepped out of the Duke's study, he ran into Diella. She had been waiting for him for some time. You arrived so suddenly, and now you leave so abruptly. He intended to interrupt Miss Diella, but it was unavoidable. She continued, I know you won't listen, but I'll say it anyway. Her voice grew softer. Can't you stay? He pondered for a few seconds, then stepped closer to her and began to explain as usual. I will return to my life as a mercenary. I will also study a lot more magic. And once Miss Diella has acquired more skills, you will go to Abelstein to present yourself to the nobility. Then we can meet again. If my level rises a bit before then, I'll be able to teach you a few new things. So you're comforting yourself? Diella approached. How annoying. You're always right, so I have nothing to argue with. Cut to nighttime. Diella was now fast asleep. In her dream, countless eyes turned toward her, taunting, Diella, you are a useless child. A completely talentless child. What do you have to be proud of besides your bloodline? You don't even have a scrap of talent. You are the shame of House Duplian. You should never have been born. At that, her eyes suddenly flew open. She bolted upright in fear and shouted, No way. She was breathing rapidly, trying to calm herself. She rubbed her head and reassured herself. It was just a nightmare. Hearing the commotion, a servant pushed the door open and entered. Miss Diella, are you all right? I heard a scream. What happened? She looked at the servant before her, thinking to herself, what if I make an excuse? Maybe I could go back and slap her like before, fly into a rage, and cause trouble. Then Master Derek would stay here for me, right? Seeing she didn't answer, the servant asked anxiously, Miss Diella, are you okay? Do you feel unwell anywhere? Inside, she was engaged in a fierce internal struggle. After a moment, she replied, No. She thought to herself, I won't do things like that anymore. She offered a bright smile. I'm fine, so don't worry. She continued thinking, that wouldn't make me any more valuable. Cut to the next day. A new day had begun at the manor. Early in the morning, a carriage carrying Eislein waited outside. Seeing him, she said, Is it okay if I drop you off at the market district? He did not refuse. Yes, I will be very grateful if you could. She smiled. Say your goodbyes. We will depart soon. At that, he turned to look at the people who had been with him during that time. Only Diella kept avoiding his gaze. Valerian looked at him curiously. So you really are leaving? He answered, I must return to where I belong. Ray beside him added, Life at the manor must not have been easy for you. You've worked very hard recently. If anything happens, remember to contact me. I'll help as much as I can. Hearing their kindness, he bowed his head and replied, Thank you, sir. Then he turned his gaze toward Diella. She was staring right at him as well. They stood in silence for a long moment. Then Diella shouted, Why are you looking at me like that? Do you think I'll beg you not to go, is that it? Don't get me wrong. I'm not a child anymore. This pleased him greatly. He straightened up and said, Teaching you is an honor. I can't proudly call myself your tutor, but I hope you remember the magic you learned with me. Diella pouted in reply, Humph, excuse me, but I will proudly declare that you are my tutor. You won't be able to live in peace anymore. After all, you'll be the tutor of the great Diella Catherine Duplian. After those words, there was a silence. Seeing him still staring at her, she looked away shyly, her tone a little reproachful. Take care. Don't do reckless, dangerous things and get hurt. He warned as well, I'll be fine. Don't overdo things yourself. Diella said confidently, I'm an adult now. I can take care of myself. Those words felt deeply familiar to him, because they were the same words he had once said to his master. I'm an adult now. I can take care of myself. His master had then gently stepped forward and embraced him. Derek, remember what I've told you. Back in the present, he called out, Miss Diella. He leaned in, placed a hand on her head, and reminded her, You don't need to grow up so quickly. Those words struck the core of the girl, and she couldn't help but shed tears. But she forced herself to regain her confidence and waved cheerfully. See you later, Derek. He politely bowed in return. See you in Abelstein, Miss Diella. Cut to the afternoon. He was now at Abelstein's market district. He opened the door and entered his usual tavern. There, Feline was pounding a fat man into a bloody mess. The crowd behind them cheered excitedly. That's right. Kill him. Beat him to a pulp. Noticing someone had entered, she delivered a decisive punch. Then she turned back, smiling, and called his name. Derek. He removed his hat and smiled. I'm back home. Cut to the next day at Belden's tavern. Inside, Belden began. Though it can't compare to Noble House tea, this is your favorite mead. Consider it a coming-out party, my treat. He replied cheerfully, Thank you. Seeing his manner, Feline turned away in mock exasperation. Huh, why do you look so refined? Working at a noble household has made you pale and proper, has it? I thought those nobles must have been drugged to hire you as a magic tutor. What's the deal? Tell us a little. He was too lazy to explain. It was just work, nothing special to tell. Feline teased on. Well, why the noble speech? What's the harm in telling us a bit? Belden soothed. Feline, pipe down and drink this. Being cut off annoyed her somewhat. Ugh, that's frustrating. While he was away, I had to take all the work alone, and I'm exhausted. He looked at him and continued. But didn't Derek bring back a pile of money? They paid as agreed, right? He replied, More than money. I gained something far more important. Saying that, he produced a magic book and placed it on the table. Examining the book, Belden assessed. What's this? A second-tier grimoire. Feline was also a little surprised. Hey, something this valuable. While they were still astonished, he added, Not that. This is a third-tier grimoire. This startled the two of them. You stole it? If you're caught, your head will come off. Feline added. Oh, please, so what if it's stolen? This is third tier. I want to steal one too. Where is it? He replied, nonchalantly. It was granted to me by the Duke. These absurd words annoyed Feline. You don't be making things up. Did they even need a tutor there? Answer me, you. The barrage of questions tired him out a bit. He looked out the window. The sky had turned to midnight. Belden was busy cleaning up the tavern. Then he turned and asked, Any new jobs lately? He answered, Huh? You've only been back a day, and you already want work. He said confidently, Yes. If it's light work, I feel my instincts have dulled a bit. This amused Belden. You of all people notice dulled instincts. Magic users are always short on work. If you want, there's no shortage of jobs. He made a request. Then start as early as tomorrow. Please find me the earliest job you can. Cut to the next day. He and Feline sat in a carriage leaving the town. Their job today was monster hunting. After a struggle, they killed a goblin. After that, they had to face a swarm of giant spiders. Thus a long day passed. They returned to the carriage to prepare to camp there for the night. While Feline was still drunk asleep, he left his bed. He went out to a nearby clearing and began practicing magic. Gradually, he felt power spreading through his body. He reached out and formed a small crystal that contained tremendous power. Its power was so great, it sent him flying backward. Then a large explosion occurred, shaking the whole forest. He slowly sat up, looked at his arms, and sighed with exhaustion. Although I've grasped most of the key points of second-tier magic, the third-tier wall is truly too high. In no time, summer passed, and autumn arrived. And then winter, the tavern door opened. He and Feline stepped inside. Feline was shivering all over from the cold. So cold. How cold is this weather going to get? Seeing them return, Belden praised. You're back late. Crossing weather like this to climb the Kent Range. Feline scolded. Really? I told you to wait for warmer weather before going. Receiving the loot bag, Belden complimented. Only fools like you would go chop a harpy's head off in weather like this. Derek nodded in reply. Thanks. Feline on the other side was enjoying the warmth from a hot cloth. Feels great. He turned to the two and said, Tired like this, you'll rest tomorrow, right? There's a job that suits you well, Derek. He wondered what kind of job. He smiled. Light work with high pay, though slightly troublesome. Cut to the next day. Walking along, he thought to himself, This is a request from the Rohel Mercenary Company to the west. You've probably heard of them, the House of Count Belmiard. They seem to be looking for commoners to serve as opponents for magic practice. In other words, they needed a human stand-in to vent their anger on. Just go there and stand still for them to hit a few times. After a long journey, he arrived at the noble's magic arena. Inside, Alant was walking with a bald old man. She turned and asked, So who am I fighting today? He replied, Today we prepared a commoner for the lady to practice offensive magic on. This made her somewhat displeased. What? You expect me to fight a commoner? He affirmed, This is part of training. Miss, we promised to pay him fair compensation. So please train to your fullest. She replied dejectedly, Is that so? So this so-called training is just nobles using their status to bully commoners. He explained, But at least he is a first-tier mage. She continued, Even the instructor is almost at the second-tier threshold. Isn't the gap between first and second tier like night and day? Elsewhere, Derek was changing his clothes to prepare for work. A figure approached in front of him, making him look up. Elant stepped forward and asked, "Is it you my opponent for today?" He bowed and answered, "My name is Derek." She also introduced herself a lot. Then she thought to herself, "Derek? That name sounds familiar. I feel like I've heard it somewhere." The bald man pointed toward the practice ring and ordered, "All right, please step into the arena." She kept watching him closely. Is this guy really a mage? He looks so childish. The two of them then stepped onto the practice ring together. She said, "Okay then. Do you know the basic rules of magic dueling?" He replied, "Yes, I know a little." This made her a bit satisfied. "Good. Then put up your best resistance. I'll try to finish quickly." She calculated inwardly. Even if I'm forced to do this, if I use shock wave to fling him off the platform, it should end quickly. Suddenly he asked, "Put up your best resistance to what extent exactly?" This unexpected question left her a little flustered. "Huh? What are you talking about?" He explained, "I need to know how much I should resist to be of help to Miss Elant." Hearing this, the bald man shook his head in helplessness. But that remark made Elant get excited. "You talk nonsense. I already said, resist with all your ability." Derek fell silent for a few seconds, then began channeling mana into his arm. "If that's the case, I will comply with the lady's wishes." She, on the other side, also began channeling mana around her body. She extended her arm forward, murmuring ancient incantations. She thought to herself, "That common brat is praiseworthy to have reached first tier at his age, but he's far too arrogant. I will make him understand the wall that separates nobles and commoners." She chanted once more. As soon as she finished, she fired a mana projectile straight at him. The sudden attack did not shake his usual composure. As the projectile came near, he simply slipped aside, avoiding it with great ease. The projectile then struck a distant tree, splitting its trunk in two. The scene unfolded in an instant, leaving Elant somewhat surprised. He calmly called from across, "What's your next attack?" She was a bit angry, cursing inwardly. This brat actually has reason to be so confident. But that doesn't mean the gap between us will disappear. Then she murmured another set of incantations. Countless mana arrows shot up from the ground into the air. They moved as if alive, guided by her control. She pointed her finger straight at him and commanded, "Finish it with this." On his side, he didn't bother dodging, but immediately fired a beam of magic. His mana bullet easily shattered her mana arrows with remarkable precision. Then it sped straight toward her, signaling an unrestrained counterattack. She began calculating inwardly. It's just a simple spell, but can he control it to this extent? The bald man, watching from the side, felt secretly excited. Haha, for commoner his skill is truly excellent. Seems the rumors about him weren't idle. Elant's anger surged to its peak. She chanted another incantation. "I admit I underestimated you. This time I'll attack seriously." Seeing the mana emanating from these arrows, Derek hesitated. She'd changed tactics. She wasn't aiming to hit me. She intends to blow the entire platform away? For Noble, that level of adaptability was fairly impressive. Her arm rose high. Tens of thousands of arrows shot into the sky, forming a massive rain of arrows aimed straight at him. Seeing that, he immediately judged he could not dodge this attack. He instantly dropped to one knee and began summoning a layer of protective magic. Countless arrows struck the barrier, producing piercing screeches. The repeated impacts filled the surrounding space with smoke and dust. When the smoke cleared, he emerged from the haze without any injury. But his gaze suddenly froze at the scene ahead, because Elant had seized the opening and rushed forward, preparing to unleash the next attack. He quickly assessed the situation. An arrow at such close range, impossible to dodge, and there's no time to raise a barrier. Her talent was truly insane. At that moment, he snapped his fingers. The space around them suddenly flashed with blinding light. Unable to open her eyes, Elant was furious. "Damn it, my eyes." She still pressed forward, slowly opening her eyes. She scanned around but couldn't find him anywhere. She cursed inwardly. Where the hell did that bastard go? I can't see a thing. She told herself, "Focus, Elant. If you listen carefully, you can react in time. Just find his position." Just then, she felt something brush across her face. What just brushed past? "I didn't hear any sound. Don't tell me." At that moment, Derek's image appeared before her. Countless mana projectiles swirled around it. Without hesitation, he unleashed a barrage of mana bullets at her at extreme speed, forcing her to struggle to dodge. She immediately realized, illusory magic it erases sound? He even anticipated that I would rely on my hearing. So that first attack that missed, does he dare go easy on me? She braced herself while cursing inwardly. No way. Suddenly he charged straight at her, catching her off guard. He's closing the distance? What an idiot. High-speed deployment is my specialty. Focus, Elant. The moment magic appears from his hand, I'll strike first and end the fight. But at that moment, he suddenly changed his action. He stomped hard on the ground, pushing her backward. Countless sparks of lightning began to appear from the tips of his feet. She instantly realized his toes are channeling magic. The sudden attack forced her to struggle to defend. The bald man watching from his side thought to himself, impressive. That kid seems in natural school, but I can't read his mana flow. From the perspective of the orthodox school, it's hard to keep up. Panting on the ground, Alance said, truly an interesting brat. She stood up and stepped toward him. I'll be honest about this. At first, I underestimated you and thought you were just a braggart. She moved closer, bowed slightly, and continued. But you taught me something interesting, so thank you. With that, she channeled mana into her feet and began casting magic. Confronted with this sudden attack, he immediately put his hand forward to block the pressure. Then he skillfully redirected the flow of the attack. The strike was redirected and sent back toward Alante. Taking the full force, pushed her backward. He immediately lunged forward with another attack forming in his hand. His eyes filled with determination as he dashed toward his opponent. Alante looked at him with astonishment mixed with fear. Derek landed from the air, his right hand wrapped around a sharp purple energy crackling like small lightning across the ground. Alante looked up, eyes wide in shocked disbelief. Sweat dotted her cheeks. Her body froze under the tremendous pressure of his movement. Suddenly, a sharp bell rang, cutting through the tense air of the battlefield. The bald instructor, standing at the side, face stern behind his glasses, repeatedly rang the bell to signal the end of the match. The sound forced both to stop. Derek's feet hit the stone heavily, and the purple energy vanished from his hand. He immediately regained his composure, placed his hand over his chest, and bowed politely. You've worked hard, Miss Alante. Alante stood silent for a moment, breathing hard, her mind reeling as she tried to process what had happened. The scene shifted a while later to a resting area under gentle sunlight. Alante sat by an intricately carved table, a maid standing respectfully behind her. She looked at Derek, her voice soft but sincere. You truly are an excellent mage. Derek stood opposite, shaking his head lightly, refusing the compliment. No, Miss Alante, you are the truly excellent one. This is the first time I have met someone with such keen thinking as you. Alante caught his gaze and gave a meaningful, subtle smile. A mouth that's smooth like that shows he's far too versed in the world of the upper class. She continued, teasingly. I've heard rumors you come from common stock, but looking at this skill, you must have worked yourself raw to achieve it. Derek bowed his head, his expression turning serious. For me, that effort was necessary. I had to survive as a mercenary. Alante's eyes softened and she said quietly, Don't be modest. I'm fond of people who know how to strive. Then she glanced behind her where the bald magic instructor sat reading silent. But that old magic teacher standing back there doesn't seem to like you. So it's best not to do anything to annoy him. And also, thank you. I've learned a great deal. She sipped her tea slowly and continued. From today's match, I learn a lot. There's a friendly match at the Rosea Salon coming up. I hope for a good result. Derek looked at her, voice steady. With your level, miss, I believe there's nothing to worry about. Alante set the cup down on the table. The porcelain clinked softly but decisively, and her gaze grew sharp and distant. I don't care about those small fry. When she said that name, an image formed in Alante's mind of a refined, noble blue-haired girl. Her face was clouded with rivalry and fierce determination. The one she truly wanted to defeat at all costs was Aisline Eleanor Duplain. Derek fell silent, his red eyes fixed on her, feeling the weight of that ambition. Finally, Alante realized she'd said too much. She waved her hand and returned to a normal tone. Oh my, why did I say that? You can go now. Derek turned and left, his black cloak billowing with each step as he departed the pavilion. Left alone, Alante lifted her teacup again, thinking to herself, Derek of the Beldun Mercenary Company? That name echoed in her mind. She was sure she'd heard it somewhere before. Memories rushed back. The voice of Aisline had mentioned Derek that day. Alante's eyes widened as if struck by lightning. All the pieces suddenly fell into place. She sprang to her feet, her footsteps pounding as she hurried out. Alant rushed forward and grabbed Derek's arm, just as he was about to leave the grounds. Derek turned, his expression calm but tinged with curiosity. Alant looked up at him, a wide, fierce smile spreading across her face, her eyes bright with a new kind of longing. She asked outright, voice trembling with excitement, "Are you the mercenary who trained Daila?" As the sun began to set, long orange shadows stretched across the grounds. The scene shifted into a large room, the fireplace crackling, the only source of light and warmth. The two sat opposite each other at a small table. Alant didn't mince words and went straight to the point, leaning forward, her voice low and resolute. "As long as I can surpass Eisline, I'm willing to give up any." Derek studied her closely, the firelight reflecting in his red eyes. "You repeat the name. Do you truly want to defeat Miss Eisline?" Alant nodded. "Yes. Eisline herself hasn't even reached the 2-star threshold yet. If I can reach 2 stars before her, that would be wonderful. But if not, at least I must beat her in this magic tournament." Derek remarked that the young lady's desire to win was truly admirable. Alant scoffed lightly. "Desire to win? You even know how to put it elegantly, don't you?" She glanced down at her teacup, her reflection wavering in the amber liquid. "Perhaps. Right now, it has become an obsession for me. Before, simply to beat Eisline, I wouldn't hesitate even to use the dirtiest tricks. That envy and jealousy, they're truly filthy and ugly. I once harbored deep jealousy toward Eisline, but the results I got were never as I hoped. No matter how I tried to slander her behind her back or nitpick at her, Eisline always remained forgiving and ready to shelter me with open arms." Derek wondered, "Why are you telling me these things?" Alant looked him straight in the eye, her voice so sincere it left no room for doubt. "I reveal my own weaknesses because I want you to see how serious I am. And I also have a few questions I need you to answer for me." Derek replied calmly. "Please, miss, ask away." She drew a deep breath. "If you once worked at the Duplain Manor, you must know what Eisline's true strength level is and how my current level compares to hers. That is why I came to you to ask. If I genuinely want to defeat Eisline once, what must I do?" The room fell silent, with only the crackle of burning wood. Derek took a slow sip of tea. The porcelain chimed softly against the saucer. He admitted, "I must acknowledge that Miss Eisline's skill has reached a very remarkable level. However, Miss Alant also possesses innate talent that is by no means inferior. Yet at present, no matter how much you throw yourself into training." His words abruptly stopped when he caught Alant's gaze. Sometimes one can see into another's heart with a single look. And the young woman standing before me right now is not craving empty praise, but harboring an immensely powerful desire. She is desperate enough to beg for answers from a lowly mercenary. Silence stretched through the room, and finally Derek spoke, his tone steady and without hesitation. "You cannot defeat Miss Eisline." The cold words hung in the air. Alant did not blink, though her face tightened. Derek looked straight at Alant, waiting for her response. She answered, "No matter how difficult, I am determined to win. Even if it is impossible, I will still do it." She leaned forward, pressing both hands firmly on the table. "Didn't you turn a troublesome brat, like Daila, into a mage? So can't you help me get past Eisline even just once?" Derek was silent for a long time, his eyes half closed as if weighing things. Finally he admitted, "It's not that there's absolutely no way, but before we begin there are 2 matters that concern me." Alant sat back with her arms crossed, pleased that he had not refused outright. "Good. Now we can continue talking. What are you wondering about?" Derek asked first. "First, Miss, do you know what method I used to teach Miss Daila?" When he spoke, a dark memory rose in her mind. The image of Derek standing over Daila as she wailed in terror, the sword drawn, his face cold and merciless. Alant did not blink and answered immediately, "I don't know the details, but I am willing to do anything to win." Derek moved to the second point. "As you know, I am a mercenary, so..." Alant did not wait for him to finish and immediately cut in. "What does that matter? There will surely be ugly words about a noble lady learning magic from a lowly mercenary." "But Derek, remember I'm being extremely serious right now. I must become someone whose reputation resounds across this empire. If I can't even top the Ebelstein High Society, then all my efforts will be meaningless. So don't use those trivial excuses to underestimate my burning determination." I know very well what truly matters more than that hollow pride. Derek looked up at her, his face completely unmoved by her impassioned speech. He calmly corrected her. No, that's not what I meant. I meant that as a mercenary, I need to charge for my services. The dramatic atmosphere in the room abruptly shifted. Alant, who had braced herself for a battle of will over honor and status, fell silent. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment as she realized she had completely misinterpreted him. Oh, it's about money. So that's what you meant? Of course. No matter the cost, I can easily pay. Alant tried to hide the shame covering her. Why is it suddenly so warm in here? Across from her, Derek narrowed his eyes, thinking, if she values this so much, I'll have to use an extremely harsh method to have any chance of success. The scene shifted to the next day at a gathering of young ladies. Aisline was surrounded by other girls. The upcoming meeting will include a magic competition too. I've heard rumors that Miss Alant's skills have improved tremendously. I must prepare carefully as well. Oh my, is it time for the next gathering already? Then I must participate too. From behind, Alant slowly stepped forward and said, Miss Aisline, you are so modest. Aisline turned to look and replied, Miss Alant, so you are here? We were just talking about Miss Alant. Alant stepped closer to the group. I know. I heard Miss Aisline's voice from afar. The two girls behind felt they should step back. It seems we shouldn't insert ourselves between them. Alant smiled teasingly. But even Miss Aisline needs more practice. Haven't you never tasted defeat? Besides, you're famed as the radiant flower of the Duplain line. Aisline bowed slightly. Thank you for those kind words, Mississippi. But this time my opponent is Miss Alant, so I absolutely cannot be careless. Hearing that, Alant became conceited. To be honest, I'm somewhat confident because I recently found a new magic tutor. Although he's a commoner, his work record is very impressive, so I agreed to hire him. Really? Miss Alant personally hired him? It seems you have great faith in this new magic teacher's abilities, don't you? Alant pondered softly. Huh, to be precise. The one who placed trust wasn't me, but Miss Aisline herself. What? My trust? She turned to Aisline with a radiant smile and said, because the tutor's name is Derek. Aisline's eyes widened. For a moment she was stunned by that name. Seeing her rival's expression, Alant inwardly smiled. Ha ha ha. Look at her blank white rabbit face. Feeling upset, aren't you? Bitter, aren't you? The one you couldn't keep has now fallen into my hands. But contrary to Alant's thoughts, Aisline replied gently, well, that's surprising. Congratulations, Miss Alant. Perhaps you have already realized it yourself? He is a very thoughtful and extremely reliable person. Aisline beamed with happy smiles. Once again, congratulations, Miss Alant. The smile on Alant's lips suddenly became strained. Thank you. Wait, this isn't what I imagined. At that, Aisline suddenly remembered the conversation with her younger sister. Daila, why don't I ask Derek to give you some additional magic lessons? Lately I've noticed your power seems to have plateaued a bit. If it's Derek, we can trust him completely. Daila immediately refused. No, really it's unnecessary. I don't think it's needed at all. Please never do that. Because you are extremely important to me. Aisline drifted in her own private thoughts. Alant at her side felt delighted. That's right, Aisline. Think it over carefully, and you'll surely understand what it means that I stole him. Feel free to nurse your resentment. Alant, have taken your teacher away. Aisline snapped back to attention and spoke. Miss Alant, actually Derek is a bit. But Alant cut her off. Oh my, is it this late already? Today's conversation has been very entertaining. Since this is the first lesson, I'll take my leave now. Alant walked away, smiling at her daydreams, leaving Aisline feeling very flustered. There shouldn't be anything serious, right? After all, Derek isn't the sort of person who'd be truly malicious. Nearby, a white-haired girl sipping tea had seen everything. She took a quiet sip of tea and thought, those people are also fighting to live with great determination. Cut back to the Beldon mercenary band. Derek was talking with the captain. For the time being, yes. I need to focus all my attention on the work over there. To the Belmere Count's household? Why does your scope of work keep expanding? He replied calmly. Also, I don't have to travel all the way to the Count's manor, so it's less burdensome. It's enough to handle everything neatly in Ebelstein. Hey, it sounds easy to say, but do you think our miss can beat Miss Aisline in that match? Derek looked at the cup in his hand. It's not entirely hopeless. I still have a way. As long as Miss Alant can break through to 2-star rank, Then even facing Miss Eisline, we can use the superior star rating to crush her and win. Hearing that, the captain sighed. All right, forget those unrealistic things. Then what is the most feasible plan you intend to pursue? I was just about to explain that method to you, Uncle. That's why I need your assistance. His expression suddenly turned serious. Also, to guarantee absolute safety, we'll need Felon's support as well. The man fell silent, looked at him for a moment, then grumbled. This brat. Are you planning an extremely risky scheme instead of a feasible one? He retorted. The truth is this endeavor is already full of dangers, Uncle. Felon beside him, drunk, shouted. That's right. It's extremely dangerous. Those scoundrels are all swindlers. I've been cheated by them painfully. They drain me of every last coin. Boo-hoo. The uncle was left speechless at that. Fine, just take it and use it. Cut to the afternoon at the Elant family manor. Derek was slowly explaining everything. First, we'll begin the lesson with practical sparring. Basically, this will be repeated 10 times. After that stage, I'll start delving into the detailed analysis of the magic, suddenly making me fight 10 consecutive rounds. I need to closely observe the miss's actual combat ability first. After all, Elant smiled at him. That's truly the style of someone from a mercenary background. Rude, really. But fine, I didn't hire you to sit and listen to old history lessons. Derek rolled up his sleeves, his hands beginning to gather surging mana. Then I'll take the liberty of beginning. They trained until dusk, the training floor riddled with cracks and breaks. Elant panted with exhaustion, sweat running down her forehead. Derek slowly approached and said, You worked hard, miss. Rest for about 10 minutes, then we'll summarize the basic magical principles. Hearing that, Elant was astonished. What? Only 10 minutes? I don't have any mana left to use. He paid no mind and continued. If you push yourself, you'll definitely still have some left. This isn't the proper form for a fire spear. Focus intensely and create 10 more ice spears for me. More. This isn't the proper form for a fire spear. Focus intensely and create 10 more ice spears for me. More. Next, produce another 100 mana arrows for me. I really have no mana left. Instead of wasting time making excuses, focus on creating one more arrow. After fulfilling all of Derek's demands, Elant collapsed to the ground, panting. Her body went limp as if she'd been running all day. He slowly stepped forward and said, You've worked hard all afternoon. Now you may go have dinner. His eyes narrowed as he added, Are you all right, miss? If you feel you can't endure, quitting is also an option. Those provoking words made Elant spring to her feet. Damn it, You expect me to quit after just this session? You threatened me plenty before the lesson started. I wondered how harsh you'd be, but it turns out it's just heavy work, is it? You probably can't know what I've had to go through just to survive in the rumor-filled high society of Ebelstein. These trivial matters? They're nothing to me. Is that so? Perhaps I underestimated you, miss. I'm just a bit tired today from attending a social gathering. Starting tomorrow, I'll show you my true ability. So tomorrow, you should increase the training intensity to something harsher. This mild level still won't faze me at all. Hearing that, Derek looked puzzled. Tomorrow? What do you mean by that, miss? The smile on Elant's lips suddenly faded. Derek stared at her, his expression stern. Didn't I tell you? This is just the dinner break. The atmosphere between them suddenly froze. Elant couldn't believe her ears and asked again. Are you joking or what? I didn't take this job to be mocked, miss. They then trained from night until the next morning. His voice continued. All right, miss, keep pushing a bit more. This is the last time. Please produce exactly 5 more magical arrows for me. Elant gritted her teeth, her body trembling from exhaustion. There is still some magical energy left in your body. I want to see 10 more arrows. Why does the required number keep increasing? After a while, they switched to physical training. If you feel you can't run any further, we'll move to mana release exercises. Elant panted, but still tried to refuse. I'm running. After the grueling exercise, she collapsed onto the chair, as if about to faint, her face deathly pale without a drop of color. Derek walked over and sat down beside her. Are you all right, miss? Quite interesting. If you truly feel it's too much, giving up is also an option to consider. Elant smiled. Who would ever surrender? I can handle this little matter easily. He regarded her with a thoughtful look, but said nothing. Then it seems you've rested enough. Let's begin the match. Elant's expression was surprised. What? I just barely sat down. Time passed, and 2 weeks flew by. Elan arrived at the young ladies' gathering looking exhausted. She had her head on the table. "Miss Denise, if Miss Eislein comes by, please wake me up." "Yes, understood. Thanks so much. Lately I've been so busy training my magic that I haven't had a moment of free time." Denise calmly asked, "I have a small question. Why are you pushing yourself to that extent?" Elan fell silent, trying to arrange her thoughts. "It's all to claim victory, simply because I truly want to win." Denise was momentarily stunned by her answer, but quickly smiled. "Then do your best. I will always support you, Miss Elan." Suddenly someone approached, causing her to turn her head. Eislein was there, chatting happily with 2 others. Denise hurriedly called to Elan. Miss Eislein has arrived." Elan startled upright and hurriedly tidied her disheveled hair. But all those movements were fully within Eislein's view. "I heard a new fashion shop opened. Shall we go take a look?" "Ah, sure. Let's go then." Eislein glanced up at Denise and asked, "Are they gone?" "Yes, they've left." "Phew. Hopefully she didn't see me in this pitiful state." Maybe so, but contrary to her assumption, Eislein had seen everything. She worried inwardly. "Miss Elan looks utterly exhausted. Does she really still be all right?" Cut to the next day. A servant brushing Elan's hair said, "Miss, there's a gift sent from the Duplain family for you." "The Duplains?" She opened the box. Inside were very expensive vials of remedies and an attached letter. It seems Miss Eislein herself sent them. Everything inside is items to help restore mana. These high-quality items will certainly help you a great deal. But Elan had no interest in them at all. "Throw them all away." "Pardon? What did you say, milady?" "Throw them all out for me. Don't let those things irritate me any further." "Yes, I understand, milady. Continue preparing." "Has Derek arrived?" "Yes. He has been here since dawn and is ready." The contents of the letter sent to the young ladies of the Rosea Society read, "Winter is approaching. Before long, white snowflakes will begin to fall in this cold season. Is everyone safe and well? Fortunately, our territory has just produced a large amount of quality goods. Wishing to share this joy with the young ladies I cherish, I send these gifts to you. I hope today will be a peaceful day for you all. Sincerely." Cut to the outside. Derek sat on a bench reading his book of magic. Suddenly a sound caught his attention. Elan stretched and walked over, replying, "There's not much time left. Let's skip the lengthy greetings." Suddenly she looked him straight in the eye and asked, "Hey, Derek, from an expert's perspective, what do you think?" "What do you mean? Surely you understand. We've been training together for weeks. I want to hear your honest opinion." Derek was silent for a moment, then spoke softly. "Sometimes accepting defeat isn't such a bad option." The air instantly froze. Everything grew tense. Elan turned to him with an annoyed look. "You really only know how to rile people up, don't you? If my words offended you, miss, I sincerely apologize." Hearing that only further angered Elan. "What? Surrender? Since when did I ask you about that? What I want to know is how. How do I fight to defeat Eislein? I'm not paying you just to hear advice telling me to give up." "Ah, if you're going to spout nonsense like that again, then get out. You're just wasting my time." Suddenly Derek spoke, breaking the tension. "If you can't win, then what's the point of all this effort? Sometimes being obsessed with victory is the very barrier that stops you from progressing. There are times when having the courage to face and admit defeat. If you do that, how pitiful and pathetic we'd appear." Derek's voice trailed off as he watched her quietly. "Like I said, I'm just the sort who talks behind Eislein's back. The linchpin of House Belmiard or the rose of the Rosea Society. I'm unworthy of such titles. My true nature is nothing but petty, hateful envy and contemptible jealousy. I've admitted it all, everything. I know exactly how naive and detestable someone like me can be. And I've accepted the truth that my hatred for Eislein has no legitimate reason. I understand that myself. But why is that? Why does this damned feeling of inferiority and worthlessness cling to me and refuse to fade? Why? What is the reason? It's hatred directed at myself. Even if I must expose all my weaknesses, I still want you to see how serious I am. Also, I have 3 important questions to ask. Within Elan's soul hides a fierce self-loathing. If my ultimate goal is to defeat Eislein, what must I do? At first I thought it was merely jealousy or a fleeting desire to win. But it turns out the person this girl truly hates isn't Eislein, but rather herself. This battle did not stem from sudden jealousy. The only path that can free her from self-hatred and oppressive inferiority is a single one. If that's the case, then win. To face Miss Eislein, I will personally help you achieve victory. His words were like encouragement that immediately revived her spirit. The scene shifted to a carriage rolling across a vast rice field. When the destination appeared ahead, the horse finally slowed to a walk and stopped. The door opened, and the lead wizard slowly stepped down. "We're here." He looked ahead. It was the territory and manor of Count Belmiard. From the castle, a middle-aged man stepped out cheerfully and called. "How was it? Was the trip to Abelst all right?" The professor bowed respectfully. "Are you well, my lord?" He smiled and replied. "Long journeys are tiring. Sit down and rest." He was the lord of Belmiard, Tristan Arnel Belmiard. The two quickly went into the parlor and talked. "How long has it been since I've seen my dear? While you were there, was the girl doing well?" "Yes, my lord. Lately the young lady has been devoting herself to practicing magic." The count laughed with satisfaction. "Ha ha! I've never seen a young lady with talent like our Allant. With that gift, she'll surely surpass me soon." The old professor bowed in admiration. "Aha, I hope so too. Absolutely do not let him know the young lady is studying with a commoner. If it leaks out, both I and Miss Allant will be in serious trouble." "Ah, that's right. I have some business to stop by Belle soon." Hearing that made him startle. "Yes." The count stroked his beard thoughtfully. "If I suddenly appeared and gave an unexpected gift, how would the girl react?" "Ha ha. She would certainly be delighted. Not sure if I'll survive this part." The scene shifted to the outskirts of Abelst, an unnamed maze. Feline stepped forward, her voice full of doubt. "I still feel like something's off. Putting a frail young lady into a dungeon like that. Would that be all right?" Belden put his hands on his hips and replied calmly. Derek must have planned everything. Allant anxiously pointed at herself. "Wait, you mean I have to go into that dungeon? Me?" He glanced at her and reassured her gently. "This is the lowest tier dungeon in the area. It's nothing difficult. Even so, what can I do in there? Am I supposed to just storm in? You need to train your instincts through real combat. To guard against the unexpected, my colleague and I will follow closely behind." Hearing that, Allant was still extremely unsettled. "Are you serious? You're joking, right? The duel is in just a few days. Time is running out. This is the optimal method." Having said that, Derek formed a spell and entered the maze, leaving Allant hesitating whether to continue or stop. The four quickly walked down the dark, damp corridor. Fear drained the color from Allant's face. She looked at the disgusting things on the walls and wondered, what kind of demon trial is this? Derek didn't answer. He only warned carefully, "Prepare yourselves. Even a lowest-ranked dungeon demands utmost caution." The seriousness in his tone made the atmosphere even tenser. Allant stepped back slightly without saying more. Suddenly Feline sensed something approaching. "Derek, a pack of goblins is coming up ahead." What? What? I heard that." Before they could recover, Belden reported from behind. "Derek, there's a huge one behind us. It looks like an ogre." "An ogre?" He calmly assigned the task. "Can you handle that ogre?" "Huh. Depends on how much extra you pay." Derek's expression remained impassive as always. "We'll settle payment later." Ahead of them, countless red eyes stared out of the darkness, murderous intent thick in the air. Seeing that, Allant trembled all over, her mind feeling lost in the maze. Are they really doing this? Monsters. No sooner had she finished speaking than the goblins began charging wildly. Derek drew his sword and leapt forward to engage them. Before charging, Derek reminded Feline, "Protect the young lady." His sword glowed with a radiant aura. "These shrimp won't be worth worrying about." From behind, Feline also fired supporting arrows. An arrow sliced through the air and struck a goblin squarely in the forehead, sending it flipping backward before it could react. Alone, Derek bombarded the encircling monsters, each swing easily, cutting them down. With his other hand, Derek cast fire magic. Feline fired 2 attacking arrows at once. The battlefield suddenly became one-sided as blood sprayed, and monsters fell one by one to the pair's might. The frenzied scene left Allant dazed, sweat soaking her face as her breath came in ragged gasps. Suddenly, a savage roar came from behind, startling her. When Allant turned, a massive silhouette of an ogre loomed into view. It gripped a gigantic club. Belden hefted his great sword and smiled. "How much is your head worth, I wonder?" The ogre roared and charged madly, but Belden severed its arm in an instant. Allant stood frozen, her mind spinning with her own thoughts. What's going on? They're actually killing them for real. I could die. This is insane, impossible. While she panicked and didn't know what to do, a roar from the front snapped her back to reality. Derek turned and shouted, "Miss, there's one charging at you." Snap out of it. Elon's body went rigid, her eyes full of despair. I'm surely dead. This time it's over for me. Derek's words seemed to jolt her awake from her fear. Do I have to take it down? But I've never hunted monsters before. Memories of herself surged into her mind, tormenting her with her helplessness. A goblin leapt at her, its eyes wild and devoid of reason. I've always been all bluster and never achieved anything. I'm nothing but envy and gossip, a throwaway thing, but I've been trying to change. Her hand quickly gathered mana, forming an ice spear born of unshakable resolve. I came here to end my old self and become a better version. So don't you dare stand in my way. A dry sound rang out as the ice spear pierced the creature's body. Elon had felled her first goblin. Belden and Feline watched the scene with satisfied expressions. Elon was still in shock over what had just happened. Her body trembled uncontrollably. Her breathing was exhausted. She looked toward Derek, who regarded her with an approving nod. This is only the beginning. She told herself, no. Finally, she could take one more step forward. Outside the mysterious maze, the air remained gloomy as always, white light illuminating everything in the darkness. In contrast, inside, Derek was leisurely reading his letter. Dear Derek, it's been over 2 years since I left Ebelstein. Sorry for being so slow to keep in touch with you. At present, I'm teaching magic to the Count's daughter, Miss Elvester. She's very eager to learn, which keeps me busy teaching all sorts of things. I remember strolling the streets of Ebelstein and teaching you magic. Though life was a bit hard, it was much freer and happier. Of all the mages I've met in my life, Derek, you are the most talented. What level have you reached now? If we have the chance to meet again, please show me your magic. Your old teacher, Kadia Flameheart. He stared at the letter for a long moment without saying anything. Elant, seeing this, immediately asked, I've been here 2 weeks now, and whenever you're free, you bury yourself in that thing. Can I ask what is now? Derek slowly folded the letter and answered, It's a letter from my teacher. Hearing that, Elant grew interested. Oh, it must be a wonderful teacher. To patiently teach someone like you is truly remarkable. Derek, not understanding, replied calmly. She really is exceptional. His answer left Elant frozen for a few seconds. Was that a slight at me? Where? Never mind. It's nothing. He put the letter in his pocket and said, The competition is in 2 days, right? How are you feeling? Feelings? I'm not really sure about that. She turned to him and beamed. This time I absolutely have to beat her. The scene shifted to 2 days later at the Noble's Magic Arena. The atmosphere here was extremely lively. As always, Aisline was surrounded by many of the young ladies. Suddenly her gaze stopped on someone. A familiar figure had just passed through the crowd of nobles and caught her attention. Aisline gave a slight bow. Excuse me, I need to step away for a moment. She ran over to him and called loudly, Lord Derek, Lord Derek, it's so good to see you again. He politely bowed in return. Long time no see, miss. Aisline continued eagerly. I heard you're helping with Miss Elant's magic, right? Derek bowed his head and admitted quietly, Yes, we're just acquaintances by chance. Their conversation suddenly fell silent. Aisline tilted her head in confusion and remarked, Lord Derek is still the same, isn't he? Aren't you a bit too strict with Miss Elant? Daila once said, Lord Derek is not an ordinary teacher. Lately Miss Elant looks tired. Hearing that, Derek was briefly puzzled. Worrying about an opponent like this? She's so confident, isn't she? Derek looked at her seriously and offered a useful piece of advice. Whoever your opponent is, don't be overly complacent. Aisline was slightly stunned by the tension he projected. After a while, at last the decisive match began. In the stands, the young ladies kept chattering about the outcome. So who do you think will win? Of course Miss Aisline, unless Miss Elant can use second-tier magic. Poor Miss Elant. She looks gaunt. From the arena floor, Aisline slowly stepped up with her usual elegance. Oh my, Miss Aisline is here. Well, she looks as beautiful as ever today. On the other side of the arena, Elant strode steadily onto the field, muttering to herself, I must win no matter what. She fixed her gaze on her opponent, determination swelling. I will definitely win. Below in the stands, Derek watched his student carefully. Aisline gave a polite bow. Are you well, Miss Elant? Elant returned the bow with a smile. Miss Aisline, are you well? Your composed demeanor is a fine example for me. But unexpectedly Aisline denied it. No, I've never been this excited for a match before. They stared at each other. Then shall we begin now? Honestly, I've been looking forward to this match too. Elant's hands began to gather blazing red fire magic. Across from her, Eislein produced magic that felt more refined and skilled. The arena was suddenly dominated by two sources of energy, and the air grew tense. Elant began to release mana and chant her incantation. Countless magic arrows formed in the sky. Eislein's eyes widened in astonishment. Before her was now a storm of arrows that filled the vast sky. Elant was filled with resolve. She recalled Derek's earlier admonitions in the dungeon. If you fight with pure magical skill, you can't win. Then what should I do? How can I win? Derek wiped the blood from his face and answered clearly. Will, the way to drain mana to the absolute limit. You've learned that from me already. Huh? Forcing myself isn't your hobby, is it? I don't have such a strange hobby. If both are depleted of mana, the result is decided by will, not skill. Release the most spectacular, powerful magic you can. Turn the match into a battle of attrition. When the attrition ends, whoever forces out even a single drop more mana will be the victor. Hearing this, Elant asked, but what if Eislein's mana is far greater than mine? He answered bluntly, then you will lose. Most mana is innate talent, and Miss Eislein carries the Belmiard family bloodline. Therefore, place your trust in yourself. Eislein opposite her was still in shock. Miss Elant, is this good? Elant raised her arm high, ready for a powerful opening strike. A barrage of missile arrows hurtled toward Eislein, but she quickly regained her composure and cast her own magic. Even so, I must win. Their eyes met in midair. The determination between them was undeniable. I absolutely cannot lose this battle. On command, a volley of missiles raced straight toward Eislein. Elant's eyes were filled with determination as she met the assault. Across from her, Eislein summoned a protective shield to absorb the incoming attack. One after another, arrows slammed into the magical barrier, making the magical layer shudder violently. A series of explosions erupted, exciting everyone watching outside. Is that Miss Elant's magic? It seems her mana has increased dramatically. When the smoke cleared, Eislein remained safe beneath her protective magic. She thought to herself, the destructive power is terrifying, but she's just firing wild. Watching from inside, she saw Elant changing position, trying to attack from behind. Eislein murmured with pleasure, found you. She summoned a magical ice arrow from her arm. My turn, Miss Elant. Once the spell was complete, Eislein fired the attack at high speed toward Elant. But Elant seemed unaware of the incoming attack and kept moving. As the arrow neared Elant's body, it passed through her as if through thin air. As the arrow neared Elant's body, it passed through her as if through thin air. What? A magical illusion? Maintaining an illusion like that must consume a huge amount of mana. Just as she realized this, Elant appeared behind her holding an ice arrow. By the time she turned around, Elant was close, ready to strike. A few days earlier, Derek's explanation echoed. It will be blocked. This surprised Elant a little. What? He explained. First she'll use rockets to gain sight, then illusions to deceive. Next she'll close in and strike with an ice spear from close range. Even an experienced fighter can make a mistake and get hit. But your opponent isn't limited to ordinary experience. Back in the present, Elant concentrated all her focus on this attack. Across from her, Eislein began to analyze. An ice spear at such close range. There's no time to deploy a defensive spell. So then, without hesitation, she extended her arm forward, forming a small, rotating mana orb before her. Elant charged on, aiming to deliver a decisive blow. The mana orb in Eislein's hand took shape. As soon as it completed, it shot straight into the space before her. The force of the attack made her stagger back and keep her distance from Elant's incoming strike. Indeed, Elant's attack drove the spear straight into the ground. Eislein's gaze was fully focused on the battle. Elant was surprised by the earlier scene. What was that just now? Opposite her, Eislein felt similarly tense. That was close. She recalled what Derek had told her. No matter who the opponent is, don't be overconfident. At the same time, Eislein understood. Now I understand what Derek meant. From her control level to the way she manipulates magic, everything was different from before. If that's the case, then I will. Immediately, countless vortices of magical energy appeared at her feet. Then a barrage of ice arrows began to materialize at her command. There's no choice but to go all out. Besides, I'm very confident in my destructive power. One after another, the ice arrows shot up into the sky, preparing for a decisive strike. The onlookers outside began to murmur. All of them are ice spears, and she doesn't even need incantations. That quantity is impressive. Derek also watched the battle below intently. Back at the fight, Aisline thought to herself, right now, I can clearly see how much Miss Allant has improved. Allant always had her own preparations. She lightly waved a hand behind her, as if to do something. Something suddenly appeared from the sun high above. Aisline's eyes were full of determination. Then let's try to block this strike. On the other side, Allant's gaze grew intensely focused. She then channeled mana into her arm. A rocket shot straight down from the direction of the sun toward Aisline, catching her by surprise. The rain of arrows easily shattered all of Aisline's ice spears, much to her astonishment. Rockets? Since when? I didn't sense any incantation or mana flow at all. She began to reanalyze. Had she secretly loaded a shot beforehand to wait for this moment? Was everything part of her calculation? The rocket now plunged down toward Aisline's feet while she made no attempt to dodge. Allant's face brimmed with confidence at this attack. Aisline couldn't shake her thoughts. I couldn't predict her attack. I really don't know what Miss Allant will do next. Above, others began to discuss. What's happening? Are these two evenly matched? Back in the fight, Allant felt pleased inwardly. This match is getting interesting. From now on, I'm gaining the upper hand against Aisline. For her part, Aisline thought, in the current situation, I can't win. In both tactics and boldness, Miss Allant is one step ahead. She reassured herself. I have to reset the situation from the beginning. Observing Aisline's determined gaze, Derek said with interest, now it's really getting started. Aisline muttered something under her breath. Her entire body erupted with a massive surge of mana. Witnessing this made Allant on the other side feel somewhat wary. Under the tremendous pressure Aisline generated, Allant had to shield her face with her hand. Are you measuring the wind? Why is there suddenly wind? If it's magic, then the mana. Suddenly Allant sensed something. At that moment, the space between the two had become completely separated from the outside environment. We could no longer sense mana from the surrounding environment. In the blink of an eye, all ambient mana had vanished. Mana restructuring is a phenomenon where environmental mana instantly readjusts when faced with an overwhelming mana source. When a mage releases mana beyond the environment's tolerance, this phenomenon occurs in the surrounding space. After returning everything to its original state, a fireball began to form from Aisline's hand. In just a few seconds, it had become a colossal sphere. Facing this immensely powerful attack made Allant break out in a cold sweat. Derek above assessed curtly. Miss Aisline has now exceeded her own limits, and the attack she's producing now is a 2-star fireball. Back at a tiring training session the day before, Allant lay on the ground, breathing very heavily. Derek approached and handed her a water bottle. Drink some water. She sat up and replied, thank you. She felt a twinge of doubt inside. Derek, to be honest, I'm not sure either. But can I really defeat Aisline? With only a few weeks of training like this. He offered encouragement. You will win, Mississippi. To be more precise, yes, you will definitely win. His words served as a morale boost for Allant. Back in the present, the other young ladies were extremely surprised by Aisline's change. Could that be? It can't be her. A fireball? A 2-star fireball. Allant was very confused by the power of the attack in front of her. Why is she suddenly using a fireball now? This wasn't part of the plan. She glanced at Derek as if pleading for help. Derek, what's going on? What am I supposed to do now? She glanced at Derek as if pleading for help. Derek, what's going on? What am I supposed to do now? Allant felt like crying out. Don't make that face. Tell me what to do, you bastard. But he still did not respond. Meanwhile, the fireball sped straight toward her. Facing this immensely powerful attack, Allant could only scream in terror. What should I do now? A defensive magic spell. How can I withstand that 2-star strike? Or use an ice spear? But she quickly dismissed that thought. That won't work. As I thought, defeating Aisline is impossible. How could someone like me do it? Denise watched the battle with an unsurprised look, while the other young ladies were astonished by the attack. At the decisive moment, Allant used the same technique Aisline had used earlier. She formed a sphere, then used the rebound of the attack to push her body back and dodge the incoming sphere. Everything she did was condensed into Aisline's gaze. Immediately after, a huge explosion erupted in the middle of the arena. The pressure of the attack was so great that Allant had to shield her face with her hand, but still her whole body was blasted backward by the force. After the attack, Aisline breathed out, exhausted. On the other side, Allant was in a similar state. Aisline couldn't believe what had just happened. Miss Allant. She dodged it? And she even used the very move I used before. Derek, outside, watched the battle with his own thoughts. So inexperienced. She keeps forcing it. Using a 2-star spell before she's ready is like a mana-guzzling monster. Aisline's arm trembled violently after the previous attack. She tried to clench her fist tightly to regain her composure. Seeing her actions, Derek commented, Miss Aisline has acknowledged Miss Elant's effort and talent. That's why she's now pouring all her strength into this. That is respect for an opponent, someone who's given their all to stand in this position. Elant's lips curled up slightly in excitement. I get what you're saying, Derek. If I can hold out, I'll win. At that moment, Aisline launched another 2-star sphere from the opposite side. Aisline tried to focus all her concentration on this attack. As soon as the fireball was formed, she threw it straight at Elant. The brown-haired girl above watched with great concern. Another sphere? This time it was flying much faster than before. As for Elant, she ran around the arena, trying to find an opening to dodge this attack. The moment she found a weakness, Aisline decided to finish it, striking straight at Elant. Elant was still moving, trying to find an opening. As the fireball rushed in, she bent down and planted both hands on the ground, then used the spring of her body to launch herself high and evade the lethal strike. Seeing her hovering in midair made Aisline squint and look upward. High above, the corner of Elant's mouth split into an excited smile. She then channeled mana again, forming another ice arrow. How am I supposed to predict its trajectory like this? Raising a shield now would only waste more mana. What will you do next, Aisline? As soon as the words left her mouth, the ice arrow shot straight downward. Facing the attack, Aisline immediately planted both hands on the ground. In an instant, she created an ice wall to block the strike. Watching this, Elant judged. That's not a defensive spell, it's just releasing mana. She exhausted her mana, creating those 2 fireballs. She then gently landed and turned her gaze toward Aisline. On this side, Aisline was utterly exhausted after unleashing so many attacks. Outside, Derek watched and thought to himself, it's almost over. Confidence lit Elant's face. I did it. Ive Kornerd Slina. She has no mana left. I still have enough mana for a fire rocket, or at least 2 more ice spears. That's more than enough. This time I've beaten Aisline. But then from behind that magical barrier, a fireball slowly emerged. It shattered the shield, leaving Elant staring in disbelief. It was almost clearly Aisline's last reserves of mana poured into this attack. Immediately after, the force of the attack hurled her backward, and she crashed heavily to the ground. But the attack lacked precision. It skimmed past Elant and shot straight up into the sky. Aisline still tried to force herself to stand. Her whole body trembled. She looked at her shaking arms and tried to reassure herself. Please just one more time. Just a little more. Seeing the meager amount of mana in her arms left her slightly disappointed. On this side, Elant calmly stood and watched, uncertain of Aisline's intentions. In Aisline's eyes now, there shone a glimmer of hopeful expectation. Scene cuts back to Elant's past memories. Honestly, in this entire Ebelstein region, no lady was nobler than Aisline. But wherever there is brilliant light, darkness is bound to exist. But wherever there is brilliant light, darkness is bound to exist. I have always been nothing but a shadow chasing after that radiant light. Elant used every trick in the book to humiliate Aisline, but all to no avail. After all, Aisline was a highborn young lady who had been pampered since childhood. Getting stabbed in the back like this, do you think you're so special? Turn your face over here and look at me. Try throwing a pathetic fit for once. But when Aisline turned around, there was no anger there, only a smile as clear as the morning sun gracing her lips. Aisline was like a precious gem, shining all the more brilliantly the more she was polished. And that light was so blinding that it left me completely overshadowed, sinking deeper and deeper into the abyss of inferiority and insecurity. Even so, I never stopped secretly sharpening my blade in that darkness. One day, I will definitely surpass you to prove my worth once and for all. And then I will escape from this hollow, deep pit. It has to happen. Returning to reality, Aisline was collapsing on the arena floor from sheer exhaustion. While Elant still had enough mana for 2 more attacks, she watched intently and thought to herself, Aisline is so elegant and beautiful, even when her hair is a mess and she's covered in mud like that. Even after tumbling and rolling on the ground in front of so many people, How could she still maintain such a calm composure? It seems like she doesn't have an image she feels forced to protect. Yes, she was always like that, only knowing how to give her all to do the job at hand well. Up in the stands, countless cheers erupted. Lady Eislein, hang in there. You can definitely do it. Get up, milady. Ellant slowly channeled magic into the palm of her hand, her eyes glancing toward Derek, who was watching. Can I really beat Eislein? His words echoed clearly in her mind. You will definitely win, milady. But then everything around Ellant vanished, leaving only an endless void. Is it finally over? Will I escape from this deep pit right here? But then those dark tentacles dragged Ellant down into the water once again. No, even if I win this match, in the end, I'll still be stuck in this place forever. But then those dark tentacles dragged Ellant down into the water once again. No, even if I win this match, in the end, I'll still be stuck in this place forever. Unexpectedly, Ellant stepped forward and spoke up. Ah, this is bad. I'm completely out of mana. How can I keep fighting like this? Eislein stared blankly in confusion at her actions. Ellant walked over and gave a slight bow. As expected of Lady Eislein, I really am no match for you. I surrender. That was an amazing match. The entire stands erupted into cheers. Wow, Lady Eislein is so awesome. The two of them looked at each other in silence. Ellant offered a faint smile, while Eislein's face showed an indescribable look of confusion. After the match ended, countless young ladies swarmed around Eislein to congratulate her. Congratulations, Lady Eislein. When did you learn 2-star magic? I was so impressed by this match. Suddenly, Eislein's eyes caught someone. In the distance, Ellant was slowly walking down from the arena. She stepped up to Derek, who was reading a book, and spoke softly. Well, did you see that clearly? He replied, That's enough. She recounted excitedly. Quite a surprise, right? I'm someone who knows how to accept defeat gracefully, too. You should have seen Eislein's face at that moment. Derek asked curiously. What did she look like? Ellant continued. Her jaw totally dropped, you know? Like she was about to drop the ball right then and there. It was written all over her face. Who knew the usually composed Eislein could make a face like that? It's hilarious. Even though I lost, seeing that was totally worth it. She smiled. Thanks a lot. Thanks to you. I felt like I had the upper hand when fighting Eislein. I'm in a great mood today. So what did you think of me? The ending was a bit of shame, but not bad, right? It seems I catch on pretty fast, don't I? Stop standing there, nitpicking over nothing. As soon as she finished speaking, unexpected tears suddenly began rolling down Elant's cheeks. She stared at the palm of her hand in utter confusion. Oh, what is this? Why am I crying? Ellant slumped down and sobbed uncontrollably. What's going on? I'm not a kid anymore. Derek offered gentle words of comfort. You did flawlessly, milady. You worked hard. The atmosphere suddenly fell silent, and no one said a word. And then Ellant broke the stifling silence with her answer. Honestly, I really wanted to win. But just as I was about to unleash the final blow, I realized a few things. Even if I win right now, I'll still just be running in circles. I'll just have to go right back to that pathetic place again. Yeah, that's just the kind of person I am. At that moment, Eislein still looked so incredibly noble. When it comes to insecurity, I definitely beat Eislein by a mile. Derek replied calmly, I'm no different from you, milady. So what if it's a little pathetic? If you don't have the courage to be pathetic, you'll never improve. Anyway, you gave it your all, so the result doesn't matter all that much. Only the two of them remained in the corridor as the sun went down. Ellant seemed to have let go of her burden. But anyway, I don't feel stuck today anymore. In the distance, Lady Denise had witnessed everything. She watched silently, as if trying to understand something. After the surrounding guests left, Denise walked over slowly to offer her congratulations. We'll take our leave first, Lady Eislein. Today's match was truly wonderful. She replied, Thank you, everyone. Denise offered a gentle smile and said, Lady Eislein has achieved another brilliant success. Watching you compete gave me goosebumps all over. Hearing this, Eislein didn't look happy at all as she replied, Lady Denise, you know too, don't you? When it comes to this match, the real winner wasn't me. Denise bowed her head slightly and smiled. She neither agreed nor disagreed. Eislein watched her intently, waiting for a sincere remark. But Denise's answer was exactly the same as everyone else's. In terms of magic skills, I find Lady Eislein to be much better than me. Eislein narrowed her eyes, thinking to herself, no, that's not it. There is something that can bridge even a gap in skill. Lady Elan has surpassed me in every aspect. Her rapid progress in such a short time. Was it all thanks to him? Eislein looked up, her eyes filled with determination, as if she had found her answer. She softly called for her maid. Daisy? Yes, milady. I need to send a letter to the main mansion to be delivered directly to the family head. Go prepare quickly. Derek, I want you by my side. The scene cuts back to the Duke's mansion. Holding the letter in his hand, he exclaimed softly, Dreyest Wolftail, why would a 6-tier-old man trouble himself to come all the way to Ebelstein? His eldest son replied, I'm not sure of the reason yet, but it seems the tariff agreement was pushed forward early to counter Lord Dreyest's movements. The Duke lost himself in thought. I wondered why Mark Belmiard insisted on coming to Ebelstein. It looks like this matter is also connected to that old man Dreyest, a master of high-level magic who possesses clairvoyance. He must definitely have some kind of object. Valerian calmly continued. Father, I also just received a letter from Eislein. She asked us to help find a magic tutor. He looked up with a nonchalant expression. Just find someone random for her. But Valerian quickly demurred. The trouble is she explicitly named Derek, which creates a bit of an issue. Currently, Derek is over at the Belmiard house teaching magic to Lady Allant. Hearing this, the Duke fell deep into thought. How about you send the butler to negotiate aggressively and see? But he immediately dismissed the idea. Never mind. I have to head over to Ebelstein anyway because of the old man Drea's situation, so I'll handle this matter directly while I'm there. The scene cuts back to Lady Allant's mansion. She was sipping tea with Derek in the late afternoon. Derek, I plan to take a break for a while. I need to put a temporary pause on my studies and everything else so I can have time to sort through the thoughts in my head. You'll still be working for the Beldon Mercenary Group, right? Derek gave a slight nod. Yeah, of course. Suddenly, she lightly kicked his leg. Derek! She leaned forward slightly and watched him intently. An amused smile spread across her face as Allant spoke up. If I call for you, will you come back to me? I mean, to keep teaching me magic. Derek pondered for a moment and quickly replied, Of course I will, but I'm not sure if I have any knowledge left to pass on to you, milady. Hearing this, Allant leaned back playfully. Oh, come on, why the sudden modesty? That's so unlike you. Well, winter is starting to fade away, isn't it? It's been a really long winter, don't you think? Time passed quickly until evening at the Beldon Mercenary Group. The door opened slowly, causing Feline, who was lost in her gambling addiction, to snap away. She waved cheerfully at the person who just walked in. Derek looked at the familiar scene unfolding before his eyes and smiled softly. I'm back. The next morning, a carriage was rolling straight toward the bustling city. Inside was Count Margrave, looking incredibly excited. At her mansion, Allant was still fast asleep after saying goodbye to Derek. Suddenly, a knock on the door rang out, annoying her. Oh my God, what is it? I already said I'm taking today off. I'm skipping my external lessons today. The maid explained slowly. Excuse me, milady, I think you should come out and take a look. Allant tiredly climbed out of bed and dragged her feet to the door. Why? I told you to just say I'm not home. Seriously. As the door swung open, Allant complained softly. Didn't you hear a word I said? Starting today, I'm going to... Standing before her was Count Margrave, smiling with immense excitement. Oh, Allant, it's been so long since we last saw each other, hasn't it? My pride, my treasure, my precious gem. Before he could even finish his sentence, the bedroom door slammed shut cold. Panicking, Allant thought to herself, why is father showing up here? She cracked the door open and smiled. What brings you all the way out here, father? I'll be right out as soon as I change. Please give me a moment. The door closed again, leaving the Count to mumble to himself. Oh, my dear child, the apple of my eye. A while later, the two of them sat down to talk about what had just happened. A young lady of the Duplain family is indeed not an easy opponent to handle. Allant replied awkwardly. Yes, but thanks to that, I also learned a whole lot. Is that so? If that mercenary fellow teaches so decently, then we should just keep him at the Belmiard house for good. Allant froze in silence for a brief moment, but she quickly responded right after. But the retainers will definitely object to that. The Count laughed out loud merrily. Don't worry. Is there anything I wouldn't do for you? Just leave it to your father. Elant's face lit up with excitement. Clearly, this was exactly what she wanted most. Shifting scenes back to the monster dungeon, Derek was hunting monsters with Feline, as usual. She turned around and shouted a warning. Derek, behind you! A goblin rushed to attack Derek from behind, but he noticed it. Just as he spun around intending to counterattack, his mana suddenly warped into an unusual red color. Derek's eyes filled with surprise, and he thought to himself, this sensation is... He aimed the magic sphere straight at the goblin. Third tier. Derek's eyes widened in focus as he activated the firewall magic. Instantly, the dungeon was engulfed in a blinding light that covered everything. Feline turned back anxiously and screamed, Derek! A shocking explosion shook the very ground, sending the birds in the forest scattering in panic. After finishing the hunt, the two returned to the Belldone mercenary group. What? Derek almost lost his life. Feline sighed helplessly. Don't even bring it up. Good grief, are all mages like that? What kind of person uses third-tier magic just to hunt goblins? Derek looked at the palm of his hand and replied, At that moment, I felt the synchronization between the magic circuits fall out of rhythm. It was exactly like the first time I reached the second tier. Suddenly, someone's voice echoed from behind, forcing him to turn around. Don't get impatient when you hit a wall. There's no need to force yourself to overcome it. Doesn't the wild school always aim for naturalness? Then again, this kind of advice probably won't sink in with a mage like you, will it? Derek's eyes narrowed, and he thought to himself, I can't sense even a shred of mana radiating from him. Yet the man standing right before me is undoubtedly the first and greatest sixth-tier explorer mage. He slowly pulled down his hat and spoke. Bring out whatever good liquor you have, so I can have a few drinks. I'm feeling a bit exhausted from the long journey. The Wandering Soul, Dreist Wolftail. Shifting scenes back to the Duke's mansion. Daila was practicing magic diligently in the dark of night. Her eyes were determined as a magic arrow was summoned from beneath the ground and gradually materialized. Daila clenched her hand tight, trying to summon even more magic arrows. But as the quantity increased, she began to lose control over them. The arrows started shattering into pieces. Daila slumped down to the ground and screamed, Hey, what is going on? This is so frustrating. From behind, Ray walked up with a smirk. I thought you'd grow more mature as you got older. Who knew your temperament would stay exactly the same? How long have you been standing there? Ray tilted his head and remarked, Even so, you managed to control 5 of them. I guess that's thanks to having a good teacher. Daila turned her face away slightly and replied, No, it's because I did well. What could that selfish Derek even help with? Ray stepped closer and said, I heard Eislein wants to hire that arrogant guy as her magic tutor. What? No way. What if she ends up suffering exactly like I did? Don't say things that make people misunderstand Derek like that. The other day at the ball, I overheard rumors about this. It seems Lady Elant also wants to keep Derek around for work. Daila thought to herself petulantly. Why is that guy in such high demand? He managed to discipline a stubborn kid into a proper person. So of course he's going to be famous. Huh? Who's a stubborn kid? Well, you used to be. If Derek chooses Eislein, that would be great too, wouldn't it? Who knows? Maybe you'll get a chance to see him again because of it. That guy named Derek whom you think about day and night. Daila's face instantly flushed red with embarrassment. When did I ever think about him? Forget it. Let's just pretend I didn't hear that. He continued. Good news travels fast, so probably everyone knows about Derek by now. Let's just hope no one else jumps in to compete for him. The scene shifts inside tavern. At this moment, Dreist was leisurely enjoying a refreshing glass of beer. Derek looked toward him, thinking to himself, Dreist Wolftail? Why would a mage of this caliber appear in a place like this? After finishing his beer, he let out a sigh of pure relief, turned around, and asked, Your name is Derek, right? He nodded in confirmation. That's right. He knows me. He then made a proposal. If you don't mind, can we chat for a bit? Just the two of us. He hesitated slightly at this offer, and then the two walked out toward the outskirts of town. Walking ahead, Dreist evaluated. Your magical talent is too ambiguous. This is certainly something you've never heard before, because your skills are quite outstanding. Derek followed from behind, continuing to listen to his words. He suddenly asked, Why do you strive so hard? What do you hope to achieve by learning magic? He replied, I don't have such grand ambitions. I just feel that once I've grasped even a tiny bit of talent, I'm simply curious to know how far I can go and how much further I can push myself. These words left Dreist somewhat satisfied, and the corners of his mouth twitched up in amusement. As a commoner, if you dream of reaching a higher realm than your current one, then in your current state, you're still a bit lacking. Shall I help you? Such a sudden offer made him even more suspicious. A 6-star mage, Dreist Wolftail, born a commoner. He reached 2 stars right as he came of age. And when he started a family, he reached 3 stars. That commoner-born mage became a spiritual beacon for all the working class. His village became an ivory tower revered by commoner mages. Then, in the year he became a 4-star, a major tragedy befell him. At this moment, he returned to his beloved home. Upon stepping inside, a horrifying scene unfolded before his eyes. He had lost his family. Shifting to another location, a voice rang out. Dreist, have you finally learned to keep your head down? The other person replied, Yes, Count. Dreist has gone into hiding, and those arrogant commoner mages have fallen silent along with him. The Duke in red mocked. Lowborn scum get scared and tuck their tails so easily after a little threat. That's just how they are individually. Why should commoners be greedy for magic in the first place? If Dreist goes missing again, because the bald man's head had just been sliced off by something at that very moment. Looking at the dark shadow behind his back, the Duke's voice screamed, Dreist! Terrified, he tried to turn and run, but Dreist instantly swung his hand and severed one of his legs. Before he could process it, his other leg was sliced off too. Losing his balance, the Duke tumbled to the ground, crying out in pure terror. AAA, please spare me. I'm sorry. I am truly sorry. Please, I beg of you. Just as he said this, his tongue was also sliced off by Dreist's magic. Immediately following, there were countless agonizing screams echoing from inside the mansion. After that, for 13 long years, he lived under the pursuit of the royal family and the nobility. When Dreist broke through the 5-star threshold and became an anti-royal 6-star mage, everyone finally realized one thing. If they continued to oppose Dreist, the kingdom would be in jeopardy. The royal family recognized Dreist's revenge as justified and protected their authority by granting him a title. Thus, Dreist became the man who received a noble title solely based on his magical strength. And right now, I could be taught by someone like that. Then there's no reason to refuse this invitation. Shifting scenes to the next day at the Ebelstein Noble District, inside the central meeting room, Clean Hall. Inside the meeting room, the white-haired Duke spoke up. Grand Duke Duplain, you intend to expand toward the north of the Belcos Peninsula. Nowadays, one must be careful with the labyrinths in the White Zone. If necessary, I can dispatch our knights to support you. This man was Grand Duke Veltus, Andalof Kellogg Veltus. Duke Duplain shot back. Those knights you speak of, could they perhaps be that lowly mercenary scum? Seeing his troops mocked made Duke Veltus a bit angry. His voice shifted instantly. It is quite difficult to manage such a vast territory with only private soldiers. Abandoning the territory is always an option, you know. Faced with this threat, Duke Duplain immediately flared his mana in response. Seeing the tension rise in the room, Duke Belmiard spoke up to smooth things over. It seems the meeting is pretty much wrapped up. Since you've come all the way to Ebelstein, why don't you go see your children? Hearing that, Duke Duplain shot back. Speaking of which, I heard your daughter Elant fought on equal footing with Aisline. He replied with a smile, yes. Although she lost in a disappointing finish, it seems Elant showed that her talent is blossoming. With just a little more training from a good teacher, she will definitely surpass Lady Aisline. At this point, Duke Duplain wavered slightly. Right, a teacher? Do you mean Derek? He then put his glasses back on, flaring his mana to threaten right back. If he becomes Aisline's trainer, Elant will never be able to surpass Aisline. Seeing his daughter mocked made Duke Belmiard furious. He flared his mana as well, then replied with a smile. I wonder if that will happen, considering his bond with Elant runs quite deep. Duke Duplain cut him off instantly. You think he's the type of person who acts on personal feelings? You don't grasp his character at all. Watching the two of them keep talking about one guy made Duke Veltis a bit curious. Just who on earth is this number one guy that these two are so desperate to have him? I should have Denise look into him. The scene shifts back to the familiar tavern. At that moment, the tavern door opened and Belden's voice rang out. Welcome. Looking at these people dressed in incredibly lavish noble attire left him a bit flustered. Belmiard's voice rang out. Are you the mercenary captain of this squad? A mug of beer was then placed right on the table, and they dove into the main conversation. Since I didn't receive a reply to the letter sent by my chief butler, I had to come here in person. Belden's voice sounded a bit panicked at this point. I am terribly sorry, but the thing is, since I didn't receive a reply to the letter sent by my chief butler, I had to come here in person. Belden's voice sounded a bit panicked at this point. I am terribly sorry, but the thing is, a few days ago, he said he was going to turn down all requests and then vanished without a trace. This piece of information left Duke Belmiard a bit puzzled. Vanished, he thought to himself. Could Duplain have snatched him up already? Or maybe Veltis? No, there's absolutely no information on that. I'll just have to go find him myself. The scene cuts to the outskirts of Ebelstein, the mansion of Grand Duke Veltis. Inside the room, Denise was casually enjoying an apple in her hand while reading her father's letter. She turned around to ask her maid, "When did this letter arrive?" The maid replied, "Milady, it was delivered early this morning. They said the family head sent it in an absolute state of urgency." Inside the letter, it read, "Quickly find a man named Derek and hire him as a tutor." She thought to herself, I guess father's in a real hurry, because that mercenary's value is currently at its absolute lowest. She then let out a thoroughly exhausted sigh. What a drag. Today is a hugely important day. Today is the exact day I've been waiting for so long. The new book by the great author Rayleigh, The Young Lady Yields to the Cold Grand Duke's Frozen Greatsword, is finally out. What exactly is a frozen greatsword? I'm dying to know. She sighed once more. What can I do? If I don't listen now, father will just nag me even more later on. She then turned around to call her maid. Bella. Yes, milady. Get my clothes ready. I'm going out. I have someone to find. Inside a cave in a desolate canyon, Derek and Dreist were sitting in silent cultivation. The sound of trickling water and the chirping of cicadas added to the peaceful atmosphere. Dreist slowly guided him. Close your eyes and gently radiate your mana like a thin mist. Then, feel that flow of mana touch everything and bounce right back. Beads of sweat rolled down his cheeks, showing his intense concentration. The initial thin stream of mana began to spread, brushing against the surroundings like a scanning radar. He began to explain, "What you are doing right now is the core foundation of scouting magic. At 2 stars, you can lock onto targets and detect mana. By the 3rd tier, you'll see right through any illusion spells. And once you reach 4 stars, you can completely see through your opponent's heart. At the 5th tier, you gain the ability to read minds and speak with the dead. Finally, when you touch 6 stars, you will gain the power to prophesy the future." Derek asked softly in return. "See the future?" "That's right. I foresaw the future, which is why I came here to find you, because I'm in desperate need of your help." "What exactly is going to happen?" He pondered for a moment, then replied, "You know the man named Valerian, right? He is the eldest son of the Duplain family. Before you officially reach adulthood, he will plunge into the path of dark spirit summoning arts. Because of that, you will have no choice but to take him out." Derek was a bit baffled. Why would he get mixed up in dark arts like that? What exactly is he plotting? "I'm sorry, but I can't reveal any more details to you. The future operates by its own laws. If you blindly know everything, the days ahead will only become more chaotic, unpredictable, and change in incredibly messy directions. If there's one more thing I can let you in on, it's that you are destined to die." Hearing this, he still remained completely unfazed, as if it were nothing. You don't seem very surprised. You said my destiny is to die. You didn't say I'm definitely going to die." His answer made Dreist smile. He slowly stood up and continued. "Exactly. And I don't want to see you lose your life at all. You are not allowed to die, so I will step in to help keep you alive. If you want to survive, you have to become strong on your own." Finishing his sentence, he immediately cast some sort of magic straight into the sky. His hand pointed toward the clouds that were obscuring the moonlight. His voice suddenly turned uncharacteristically serious, completely overwhelming and powerful. Instantly, up in the sky, a massive magic circle expanded, sweeping away the hovering clouds. The shimmering light from it was enough to mesmerize anyone who saw it. The cave was illuminated by a dazzling beam of moonlight in one corner, like a well leading straight to heaven. Derek's eyes followed intently, seemingly understanding what he meant. Shifting scenes to the next morning, the streets were bustling and crowded. A carriage rolled slowly along the road. When it stopped, Lady Denise and her maid stepped down gracefully from the vehicle. Every eye around them was glued to her in admiration. Denise said softly to the driver, "I'll walk from this point on. You can stay here and rest." "Yes, milady." As they walked down the street, Denise softly asked her servant, "Bella, why is everyone keeping their eyes glued to me?" The maid bowed slightly and replied, "I was wondering the same thing." Denise smiled. "Could it be because I'm just too beautiful?" Hearing that, the maid next to her was completely speechless. She ranted endlessly, thinking about how Denise's room was a total mess, how she was too lazy to bathe, and how she just lay around all day reading books. She looked dull enough normally, but I think you look even worse right now. Denise didn't get upset, but turned around to tease back. "Oh my, Bella, you've gotten quite witty lately." "I'm not joking at all. Shouldn't we hurry up a bit, milady? What if another family sends someone to snatch that guy named Derek first?" "Don't worry, Bella. No matter how slow I am, I'm still faster than those people. And yet, whenever it's time for class, I always see you running late. I heard that mercenary guy turned down every single invitation and went into total seclusion, right? Are you even listening to a word I'm saying?" Her eyes narrowed as she thought to herself, "He's not the type of guy to turn down money, so why the sudden change? Or has something even more valuable than money come along? For someone who can use high-level magic at such a young age, if there's anything more important than wealth, it can only be magic. Either he accidentally got his hands on a supreme grimoire, or he managed to study under some brilliant grandmaster. If that's the case, he wouldn't have the peace of mind to work for hire anymore. So it's only natural that he rejected the requests. But that mercenary guy actively chose to leave the Duplain mansion, didn't he? When it comes to practicing magic, there's no place more ideal than the Duplain family estate, which means he found a sweet spot that's even better than the Duplain house." Suddenly, an idea flashed in her head. Could it be? The maid's voice suddenly snapped her back to reality. "Lady Denise, we've arrived." Before the two of them was the familiar Beldun mercenary group. When the door opened, Beldun quickly smiled, welcoming the guests. But then his eyes abruptly froze. "Oh my, this is quite a shock. Now, even a noble young lady is troubling herself to come all the way out here. We don't know Derek's whereabouts either. Just this morning alone, 3 groups of people came looking for him. I really don't have any other information to give you." Denise didn't care about that and just dropped a single question. "The old mage Dreist Wolftail stopped by here before, didn't he?" Beldun answered awkwardly. Getting exactly what she wanted, she smiled faintly with satisfaction. "Thank you very much for your answer." With that, she turned to leave. "Let's go, Bella. I need to cross-reference the schedule logs for the carriages." "Yes, milady." A while later, at the Carriage Drivers Association in the Ebelstein Commercial District, the two were tracking down this week's schedule. "Milady, how did you know Lord Dreist had been there?" It's totally obvious. That mercenary guy voluntarily walked away from the mansion of a 5-star mage. Would a magic fanatic like him willingly give up a 5-star cultivation spot? It proves that a figure of the 6-star caliber had to appear to be strong enough to draw him away. And I just caught wind that a 6-star mage is currently traveling to this Ebelstein region. I just took a wild guess. Who knew that old man would time it so spectacularly perfectly? Could it perhaps be because I'm just way too smart? Her maid stared intently and replied, "You never normally bother to use your brain, so I honestly wouldn't know." "Oh my, Bella, look at you talking all sassy today." She shot back, "I'm just looking at things objectively." Denise went right back to her narcissism. "Oh, I'm absolutely exhausted. It's because I'm just too talented. I just want to be a useless person. Right, Bella? Do you enjoy hearing me talk back to your face that much, milady?" "What? Don't you always see nothing but my cute side? You really never let a single word I say sink in. Even if we find him first, are we sure we can recruit him? I heard both big shots, Duplain and Bellmeyer. are fiercely hunting him down. Oh, my sweet Bella, that's actually the easiest part. I've already drawn up a flawless battle plan. What's the plan? Lady Denise leaned her head back, her smile growing even wider. It's to use a honey trap. He's a young guy at an age overflowing with passion, after all, so there's no way he can turn down a stunning beauty like me. Except your competition happens to be Lady Eyeline, right? Denise froze and asked back, "Why are you throwing cold water on me like that?" Bella, I am clearly prettier than her, right? I'm cuter, right? Answer me. It's only during these kinds of topics that you actually listen to me attentively. Ah, found it. Both of them quickly skimmed the information. This is from a week ago. A youth wearing a cloak who was carrying a transit pass. His destination was the outskirts of Ramhell Hill in the Lasper region. Returning to the cave, the two were still deep in focused magic training. Suddenly, Dreist sensed something and spoke softly. It seems someone has just tracked us down here. They look like they're from the Veltus family. They look like guests of yours. Go on out and receive them. Outside the cave, the maid next to Denise said anxiously, I beg of you, Lady Denise, I don't think we should venture any deeper. How about we go back and report to the family head, then bring some soldiers back here later? I can't do that. If I do that, the credit won't go to me anymore. Not to mention, if we mobilize troops and another family catches wind of it, what then? At that point, it'll be no different from turning ourselves into a stepping stone for someone else to snatch him away. Suddenly, the maid shrieked at the top of her lungs. Yikes, milady, there's a monster over there. Out from the deep darkness, a pair of glowing red eyes appeared. Denise hurriedly told her maid to fall back. Bella, quickly stand behind my back. Didn't they say this place had been completely cleared out? I'm not really cut out for combat magic, but given the situation, I have no choice but to take a gamble. She extended her hand forward and began incanting in an ancient language, a surge of mana starting to take shape. But then, as Derek's silhouette gradually came into view, Denise stopped dead in her tracks, completely stunned. He spoke slowly. What wind blew a noble young lady like you to a desolate place like this? Lady Denise. She slowly lowered her hand. Is that mercenary guy? All three stood looking at one another in silence. The maid beside her also breathed a sigh of relief. But then Denise smiled faintly as she calculated. Now is the time to make a mine.